Hi everyone, please subscribe to my channel. Blood Immortal Venerable. See playlist for other chapters and novels. I do not translate the novels. Credits goes to original translator and author of the novel. I only make it as an audiobook so it would be easier to just listen while doing other things. Credits goes to the author of the novel. I convert stories to audiobook for mental health, for multitasking purpose, for accessibility and time saving. Listening to audiobook is also beneficial for people who have disability. It improves our listening skills and improve our English comprehension, vocabulary and other things. So, thank you for listening. Thank you and thank you very much for your support. Chapter 3521, The Passage at the End. Grandpa Tucker. Zen bowed to Tucker respectfully. In turn, Tucker hurried forward and helped Zen get up. You are the king of our 9Li race now. You don't have to salute me, he gently scolded. Generally speaking, Zen was currently more than strong enough to command the remaining members of the 9Li race. Moreover, his origin alone entitled him to a high status in the 9Li race. This is to thank you for the latent theurgy you left for me back then, he said sincerely. Latent theurgy? Tucker was bewildered. When Ambrose saw Tucker's surprise, he explained, it's the latent theurgies we left behind in the divine land back then. The Grand Chieftain wanted to pass them on to the descendants of the 9Li race, but it turned out Zen had gotten them. At that time, Zen had relied on that latent theurgy to escape from Elizabeth's hot pursuit. Our 9Li race is destined to be blessed. After all, everything is predestined. Our other brothers can finally rest in peace, sighed Tucker. At that moment, the members of the 9Li race welled up in tears. They were the survivors of the 9Li race's core members from before, and their blood was relatively pure. Ever since the destruction of their race, they had been moving on in difficulties. Now that they finally saw hope in Zen, how could they not be happy? The moment they came to the Pear Hill, they were determined to stand together with Zen. Zen's appearance and his growth surprised all of them. If someone easily defeated him, then there would be no point for them to continue their existence in the world. It wasn't just the remaining members of the 9Li race who realized that, though. The super forces that crossed over to the Pear Hill's side also understood that only a very few people were qualified to enter the other shore at the end of the chaotic era. If the Pear Hill failed, then everything would be over. After the survivors of the 9Li race had settled down, the snake goddess asked Zen about the deleting space. The deleting space closed during the battle between Othniel and the Grand Master of Heaven. The snake goddess speculated that Zia had closed the entrance to the deleting space, but it hadn't been opened yet. When she mentioned the matter to Zen, he tried to enter it again. However, he still couldn't get in. It seemed that there was no better way but to wait. Although we don't know what the Nihility race and the Element Spirit civilization will do next, you can enter the other shore during this peaceful period, the snake goddess suggested. Zen never went to the other shore after he returned from the Eternal Scroll painting. However, he didn't forget that he still had a mission. The war in the chaos had temporarily come to an end, but the trouble he had to face on the other shore was probably even more complicated. The vast bronze plane in the Grand Plain stage, which was stage 32, had recorded the history of every chaotic era. Some of the races became extinct, but some were still active in the Grand Plain stage. The civilizations that had gotten a firm foothold on the Grand Plain stage were the ruling civilizations. Those civilizations were also quite concerned about what happened in the chaos, especially the battle in the Pear Hill. After all, that was the first time the Nihility race and the Element Spirit civilization were directly involved. There were many ways for them to hear about the news, but all the news that spread to the Grand Plain stage came from the warriors at the other shore realm in the Source World. At first, the creatures on the Grand Plain stage believed that the winner of this war would surely be the Element Spirit civilization. That was because rarely any race had defeated them for the past many chaotic eras. It was safe to say that the ruling civilizations on the Grand Plain stage all lived under the shadow of the Element Spirit civilization. To their surprise, the Element Spirit civilization lost. The forces led by the representatives the Element Spirit civilization had chosen and supported, such as the Bearing race, the Divine Farmer race, and the New Moon race, all suffered a crushing defeat. The Chaos Ancient Gods, Lamont and Herbert, who were behind them, had died. Othniel was the only one that survived in the group of Chaos Ancient Gods that sided with the Element Spirit civilization, and one of the three backbones of the Element Spirit civilization, Claire, was defeated as well. What shocked the many forces on the Grand Plain stage was that even the Grand Master of Heaven was killed. The Pear Hill fought against the Nihility race and the Element Spirit civilization alone, but in the end, they had won the battle. Naturally, the civilizations in the Grand Plain stage were shocked when they heard the news. There was already a group of civilizations that were willing to help Zen in the Grand Plain stage. When the news of the Pear Hills' victory reached them, some of the ruling civilizations that had submitted to the Element Spirit civilization even began to stray from them. Maybe this time is different. Before Zen entered the Eternal Scroll painting, the Grand Master of Heaven and Claire came to him in person. They must be afraid of something. It was said that the Element Spirit civilization was not in a hurry to make a move in the beginning. This time, they attacked the Oneness Sky Palace purely because of Zen. Even though these Eternal Realm Masters had surrendered to the Element Spirit civilization, they didn't necessarily agree with what the civilization had done. The legend of the battle on the Pear Hill and the story about Zen ignited the flames of bravery in their hearts, but even if they had their thoughts, they kept it a secret at that stage. The bronze plane on the Grand Plain stage seemed endless, that it took a lot of time to walk from one side to the other. The entrance to stage 33 was at the end of the Grand Plain stage. The dots on the ground are snow. Zen looked down at the bronze plane, where there were countless snowflakes on the ground. The images on the ground were real, but all the images in the plane refreshed once an hour. Only the snowflakes remained fixed on the ground. What was interesting was that when he stepped on the ground, he felt the cold air that came from the bronze plane. The end of the far north is a land of wild snow. Except for those masters at the Eternal Realm, very few other shore creatures come here, Libby, who was beside him, explained. Currently, in the Oneness Sky Palace, Zen was the only one who could go to stage 33. Of course, Libby, Pierce, and the other warriors at the Holy Soul Realm couldn't enter, so they only escorted Zen to the entrance. I can see that, he said as he looked at the ground engraved with dots in the distance. Is the temperature here lower than that on the upper ice field of the Blooming Jade stage? He asked. In reality, the space under the bronze ground was quite expansive. Since there were so many creatures from numerous chaotic eras in the Grand Plain stage, there were many living species within it. He had seen all sorts of other shore creatures along his way here. The gathering places of the other shore forces stretched endlessly, and some kingdoms and worlds crowded the area. However, he saw no signs of life when he arrived here. It was like all the creatures became extinct. I think so. Pierce, who stood next to him, nodded. Although there is no cold prison here, life is still forbidden in this land. Even the Eternal Realm warriors would find it hard to survive here, he explained. While he spoke, Zen saw a great bronze circle appear in front of him. There were Sanskrit words engraved around it. To his surprise, it appeared that the Sanskrit words continually changed. Moreover, they changed from one to another in just a blink of an eye. We're finally here at the stage end passage, Pierce announced as he looked at the ring. It turned out that it was not a star ring that led to stage 33, but this massive ring. Just as Zen and his group went towards the passage, a part of the bronze ground nearby suddenly glowed. 3 white balls emerged from the world of ice and snow under the bronze ground. They were members of the Element Spirit race. Chapter 3522, Inside the Layer of Earth. Unlike Claire, these 3 members of the Element Spirit race didn't have their own forms. They all maintained their original form as Element Spirits. Buzz, the one at their helm, was a cross-shaped block of solid ice. Its surface shone with a bluish-white luster. Beside it was a ball of flames, then the last member's body was made up of several different elements. Their bodies constantly changed, so it was hard to distinguish them, unlike Claire, who had a unique form. However, they emitted remarkably strong auras that were only slightly weaker than Claire's. Pierce and the others found it quite easy to deduce that they were probably part of the Big Ten of the Grand Plain stage. Are you Zen? The cross-shaped member of the Element Spirit race asked. What's the matter? Zen said indifferently. Among the humans on the other shore, he was the only one in physical form. Thus, there was no need for him to hide his identity now. Join us, we can give you 3,000 places for survivors after the Purge Way is realized, said the cross-shaped ice. Previously, Claire had offered him 300 places, but he rejected her. They increased the offer by 10 times after the war with the Pear Hill, which meant that the Element Spirit civilization's sincerity also intensified by the same value. It's not about the number of places. I've already talked to Claire. Forget about 300 or 3,000, as I won't agree even you offer 30 billion. That is my decision, Zen said with a smile. Once he had chosen a target, there was no way he would change it. The cross-shaped ice in the ball shook slightly, then calmly replied, "This is your last chance. If you refuse, we will hunt you to no end in stage 33. Since the Grand Plain stage had rules, it could be a good place for many civilizations to live and work in peace and contentment. On the other hand, the only rule on the three purities stage was strength, and the element spirit civilization was undoubtedly the most powerful force in that place. You have hunted me many times, Zen said with a shrug. He ignored the three members' threat, then walked past them towards the large ring along with the masters at the Holy Soul realm of the Oneness Sky Palace. The three members of the element spirit race stared at Zen for a while. They seemed to understand that they couldn't make him change his mind, so they just retreated. Claire's failure had also caused immense shock in the element spirit civilization. Thus, both the Big Ten of the Blood Assembly and the three backbones of the element spirit civilization became divided into two factions. One thought that they should try their best to kill Zen, while the other insisted that they should continue to persuade him to join them. In the end, the Blood Assembly compromised and decided to convince him one last time, which failed. Therefore, now the element spirit civilization would prioritize killing him. After the three members of the element spirit race left, Zen and the others went to the large ring, which was the stage end passage Pierce had mentioned. Swoosh! The ring embedded in the bronze plane sensed that an Eternal Realm warrior had approached it, and began to rotate automatically. We have to stop here. Only Eternal Realm warriors can step into the stage end passage. Once warriors like us step on it, our souls will be gone, said Pierce. Such a tragedy had happened before. Back then, some warriors at the Holy Soul realm and even some with the myriad tribulations bodies tried to pass through the stage end passage. As a result, both their bodies and souls became utterly destroyed after the ring sucked them in. Therefore, some civilizations and races in the Grand Plane stage used the ring as a special punishment. They brought those who committed a capital crime to the stage end passage for execution. The stage end passage represents the Grand Pure Realm, which is the outermost part of the three purities stage. Its high-speed rotation will enable you to appear anywhere at the Grand Pure Realm's periphery. That periphery is also quite dangerous for the warriors in the Eternal Realm, and there are 3 death lands in it. Libby kept on elaborating the situation to Zen. Libby, this is the 3rd time that you have explained this to him. Goran, who was beside her, said with a helpless grin. Although I haven't entered the 3 purities stage before, the books state that the Grand Pure Realm is the most dangerous when an Eternal Realm warrior has just entered it, Libby said calmly. The stage end passage randomly transported the warriors who entered it to any area in the Grand Pure Realm. That way, they could avoid being chased by the forces in the Grand Plane stage. However, it was extremely difficult for an Eternal Realm warrior to survive alone on the Grand Pure Realm, so the first step was very important. Don't forget that Zen is not an ordinary Eternal Realm warrior, Pierce commented. After all, he was quite confident in Zen's strength. I'm about to enter the 3 purities stage for the first time, and I'm not familiar with everything. Libby is right to warn me of the danger, said Zen. Then, he cupped his hands towards the people of the Oneness Sky Palace as a sign of goodbye and stepped towards the stage end passage. The moment he stepped onto the stage end passage, he felt his entire body spin at a crazy speed with the ring. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. At that moment, all that Libby, Pierce, and the others saw was a blurry shadow. As the stage end passage spun faster and faster, the speed at which the Sanskrit words around it changed increased as well. Not long after, the light glowed brightly, and Zen's figure disappeared in the stage end passage. Finally, the entire stage end passage became still. When he got teleported out of the stage end passage, he found that it felt similar to his experience in the star ring, but this time, it was much faster. His body felt extreme pressure under the violent vibrations. It was said that many Eternal Realm masters suffered severe injuries when they entered the 3 purities stage for the first time. But since the ancestry-level bloodline had transformed his body, it was easy for him to endure the pressure. The sensation lasted for 5 minutes before his speed finally slowed down. The once blurry surroundings slowly became clear, and everything in his vision was very dark. At the same time, an earthy scent filled his nostrils. Am I in the soil? As soon as he realized that, he immediately shut his mouth. Libby had also warned him that when he passed through the stage end passage, it might send him to some strange places, like inside a thick layer of earth. Still, he didn't expect to end up in such an odd place when he first entered the 3 purities stage. It was hard to get out of such a thick layer of soil. It's better to land inside the layer of earth than in the death lands. It would be quite troublesome if you ended up in the death lands, said the primeval Lord of Heaven. I've been inside the layer of earth twice before. Please light up this place and let me see how deep you are, he added. In turn, Zen tried hard to stretch his body and forcefully opened up space within the soil. As he raised his hand, a dull white light spread out from his palm and illuminated the small space. The soil around him was soft, and it seemed that it was soaked in blood as copious amounts of thick, red liquid kept seeping out. "Primeval Lord of Heaven, how deep am I now?" he asked. The primeval Lord of Heaven hesitated for a moment, then said, "This is the diabolic earth. You should be in the underground of the land of diabolic demons." Chapter 3523, Digging. Although it was known that stage 1 to 32 on the other shore were also full of danger, it was only dangerous for the fragile souls of light. If one could enter the other shore in physical form, they were more likely able to deal with the troubles thrown at them. This was why other shore realm warriors used to be tough enemies for other shore creatures in the past. Therefore, ever since Zen entered the other shore in his physical form, he had rarely encountered any unsolvable problems. In fact, stage 1 to 32 on the other shore could be seen as a huge training ground. The training started with stage 1, was complicated by the Soul City and the Land of Bone Tribulation, and ended in the Eternal Scroll painting. But the Three Purities stage was a completely different story. Horrible creatures lived here. To enter meant putting one's life in danger. While it was true that the Three Purities stage was extremely dangerous, the rewards it offered were extremely tantalizing. For instance, after Eastern Emperor Tai reached the Eternal Realm, he had taken back a batch of other shore tokens from the outermost Grand Pure Realm. These alone were enough to greatly enhance the Holy Soul Realm Masters of the entire Oneness Sky Palace to a higher level. Moreover, countless secrets were hidden in the Supreme Pure Realm and the Jade Pure Realm, secrets which, when discovered, were bound to enlighten and strengthen their finders. But even the outermost Grand Pure Realm was much more dangerous than the lower stages on the other shore. Although the primeval Lord of Heaven had been to the land of diabolic demons, he had never plunged into the diabolic earth. Thus, he decided to question the other human heroes to glean any information about it. Finally, he got the answer from Gong, the god of water. There were a total of 3 death lands on the periphery of the Grand Pure Realm, and among them, the land of diabolic demons was considered the most dangerous one. "If I am now under the land of diabolic demons, then that'd mean." Zen trailed off as he studied his surroundings. Suddenly, he looked up. "I would need to dig out a path upward to leave." It wasn't difficult for Zen to dig out a passageway through hundreds of miles of normal soil. "Things are not that simple," the primeval Lord of Heaven interrupted with a shake of his head. "The bodies of the diabolic demons are formed from the diabolic earth. This bloody diabolic earth is a part of their bodies." "You mean, this whole place is alive?" Sizzle. Before Zen could even finish his sentence, a scarlet liquid suddenly gushed out towards him from the wall of the small cave he was in. As the blood streamed out onto the mud, faces made of blood-red soil appeared all around him, one by one. Then, in addition to the blood-red faces, sinuous arms and sharp claws also burst forth from the muddy ground. Just moments earlier, Zen had thought there was nothing extraordinary about this soil. Boy, he was wrong. Puff, puff, puff. Zen snapped into action, swinging his fists towards the faces that emerged from the soil. Bloody mud splattered everywhere violently. However, it seemed to be futile. With every face Zen bashed in, more took its place. Everything was happening in a blur. All Zen could see was the horrible faces and sharp claws that constantly materialized around him. Gah, gah, gah. The diabolic demons made creepy sounds as they extended their sharp claws towards Zen from all directions. "Go to perdition," Zen shouted, clamping a considerable number of slender arms under his armpit. Then, he spun around violently. Crack, 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 the sickening sound of the earth-formed arms spinning rang throughout the soil. Then, a blue light flashed in Zen's right hand as he summoned a long sword from his Sumeru space. As he brandished the sword, sharp sword radiance filled up the narrow space. Initially, this cave was as narrow as a human's breadth. But, with Zen swinging his massive long sword around, it wasn't long before the cave walls crumbled to make more room. After a few moments, the cave was around 10 feet high. The diabolic demons continued to attack him from the walls, but Zen was quicker than them, slashing at them before any could get close. "These diabolic demons are not that strong. I'll manage." Zen suddenly pointed his long sword upwards, his sword radiance shooting into the ceiling of the cave. All the diabolic demons that appeared from above were minced to shreds by the sword radiance. In this way, Zen also paved a passageway spanning several hundred feet long. "Be careful, there will be more powerful diabolic demons on the way ahead," the primeval Lord of Heaven warned. The safer forbidden lands within stage 33 had long been cleared and eliminated by the element spirit civilization or other civilizations. All races that were able to survive for over 1,000 chaotic eras had their own unique strength and survival methods. Back then, Gong Gong had encountered great dangers when he explored the diabolic earth alone. He had been left with no choice but to turn his body into formless water that seeped deep into the earth. He had finally managed to flow into a hidden river in the bottom of the ground, and that was how he escaped alive. Yet with Zen, instead of acting stealthily like Gong Gong did, he actually faced the danger head-on. After Zen had drilled around several thousand feet in, he noticed the diabolic demons emerging from the walls in the distance were much larger than the ones he had just dealt with. Moreover, their thin and long bodies had a faint gray color shining on the surface. Zen narrowed his eyes. He knew what this meant. Both their attacking and defensive abilities were much stronger. However, they still weren't enough to stop Zen. He just pushed onwards, slaughtering anything that blocked his path. Meanwhile, on the surface of the land of diabolic demons, a huge, triangular flower petal suddenly unfolded. In its center sat 4 black diabolic demons. Pop! A pillar of bloody red mud suddenly emerged from the soil and rose until it connected with the head of the black diabolic demon sitting in the front. This demon blinked as he absorbed the information being sent to him through the mud pillar. After a while, the diabolic demon grinned, revealing his sharp teeth. A worthy prey is here. Is it an Eternal Realm warrior? Another diabolic demon asked excitedly. Yes, the diabolic demon in the lead nodded, smiling mischievously. What's the level of the creature's bloodline? The third diabolic demon asked. The first one shook his head. I don't know. He has a strong body, and he hasn't yet used the power of his bloodline. I bet his bloodline is quite powerful. There was a reason why the 3 purities stage was dangerous even for Eternal Realm warriors. Devouring one made the aboriginals here stronger. While they couldn't obtain the abilities of the bloodlines, the more Eternal Realm warriors they devoured, the stronger they became. Moreover, this kind of enhancement was permanent. Not only would the current generation grow stronger, but so would their children and the generations to come. The diabolic demons were notorious for their cruelty on the periphery of the Grand Pure Realm. There were a great number of Eternal Realm warriors who had died in the land of diabolic demons. Even so, the diabolic demons were still not qualified to gain a foothold in the Supreme Pure Realm. The 4 leaders of the diabolic demons were eager to become stronger. They would never let potential prey slip through their fingers. Then don't hesitate. Let's kill him. The 4th diabolic demon stood up immediately, raising his hands towards the outside of the huge petal. On the Scarlet Earth, thousands of diabolic demons rose at their leader's command. Then, they dove back into the earth, heading straight for Zen. The thick earth was as soft as water to the diabolic demons. Following their subordinates, the 4 leading diabolic demons also plunged into the earth. Zen, who was still deep in the diabolic earth, sped up his digging, but he was still unable to confirm where exactly he was underground. He didn't know that he was digging towards the very center of the land of diabolic demons, nor did he know that a large army of diabolic demons were closing in on him from every corner. Chapter 3524, Being Caught. The bright silver sword radiance was unstoppable. All the diabolic demons that crossed its path were shredded into pieces and became lifeless blood-red diabolic earth again. Zen didn't feel guilty in the slightest over killing all these diabolic demons. In his eyes, they were soulless creatures. Swoosh, 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 clang. Zen was stunned. To his surprise, his long sword had slashed at the arm of a diabolic demon, yet it just bounced off, leaving only a mark. It was his first time to encounter a diabolic demon that was able to resist his sword strike. It's a purple diabolic demon, Zen muttered as he looked the demon up and down. Then, he noticed he was rapidly being surrounded by this new type of diabolic demons. Their skin glowed a corpse-like purple, and he knew they were much stronger than the gray ones he had been dealing with till now. Go to perdition. A bright light flashed in Zen's eyes, and the power of his sword strike increased dramatically. Crack! The purple diabolic demon was instantly cut into 2 pieces. After Zen became an Eternal Realm warrior, his physical body was further strengthened. With a casual sword strike, he could release 300,000 to 400,000 divine megatons of force. Ordinary Eternal Realm warriors were no match for him. However, despite this, the purple diabolic demons were still hard to slay. Zen's pace was slowed down considerably. The purple diabolic demons are the backbone of the land of diabolic demons. They are much stronger, the primeval Lord of Heaven commented. But I don't think they are strong enough, Zen said with a sneer. Splash! The half-moon-shaped sword radiance lashed out, and 3 purple diabolic demons were sliced in half. Dark brown and black diabolic demons are the most powerful. The dark brown ones are the generals of their race, though there are not many of them. The black ones are their kings. It is said that there are only 4 kings in the whole land of diabolic demons. While the primeval Lord of Heaven was lecturing, a dark brown diabolic demon appeared. About 7 dark brown claws suddenly stretched out from the cave wall above. They were not afraid of Zen's sword blade. To his surprise, they grabbed onto his blade and started pulling at it. Under their joint effort, they were able to yank the sword right out of Zen's hand. Seeing that they were about to take away his long sword, Zen quickly grabbed one end of the sword. Then, he somersaulted backwards, with silver sword radiance twirling around him. Bang, 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 the sword radiance hit the dark brown sharp claws, but only a crisp sound was heard. The dark brown claws emerged from the attack, unscathed. Not even a mark was left on them. Zen's eyes widened in shock. Libby had told him repeatedly that the 3 Deathlands were extremely dangerous, and even the primeval Lord of Heaven had also warned him since he entered the land of diabolic demons. Yet, he was too consumed with confidence and didn't take them seriously. He had fought all the way on the other shore. Except for the few stage rulers in the dark region, he didn't encounter any other formidable opponents. The diabolic demons were the creatures on the periphery of the Grand Pure Realm. He had been under the impression that they weren't that strong, since they were just made of earth. But this time, Zen was wrong. There were really no such thing as a weak race in the 3 Purities stage. Whoosh, 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 the demons took Zen's momentary surprise as an opportunity to strike. Suddenly, those dark brown sharp claws reached out to grab him from all directions, wrapping around his limbs, body, and neck. It wasn't long before Zen was completely entangled. Then, the dark brown diabolic demons emerged. Cough, cough, cough. Goo, goo. They spoke in their own language, so Zen couldn't understand what they were saying. Zen tried to break free from the claws, but they held him down tightly. Even if he used all his strength, it was futile. I warned you, the primeval Lord of Heaven said helplessly. It's irrational to force your way out. But I didn't have a chance to get out of here, anyway, Zen whined through gritted teeth. He wasn't able to tell the direction underground, and when he first arrived, he was instantly surrounded by the diabolic demons. There was no way he could have escaped earlier. He didn't have the ability to turn himself into water and sneak away, like what Gong Gong did. Just then, the generals of diabolic demons carrying Zen suddenly bent their bodies slightly. Then, 4 black diabolic demons appeared in the earth in front of the passageway. They were the kings that the primeval Lord of Heaven had mentioned. The black diabolic demon in front studied Zen intently. His ugly face contorted into what looked like a frown. You caught him, just like that. Wasn't it too easy? The kings were all under the impression that Zen was stronger than this. As a result, they were quite disappointed he had been captured so easily. They must have overestimated his strength. After all, the stronger an Eternal Realm warrior was, the better his bloodline would be. What the kings wanted to devour the most were the Eternal Realm warriors with higher level bloodlines. However, Zen was caught quite easily, which meant he was weak. He didn't use any ability of his bloodline. Strange. Another king shook his ugly head. Maybe his bloodline power just strengthens himself. Don't you think his body is quite sturdy? A third black diabolic demon speculated. The other diabolic demons could only communicate in their own language, but the 4 kings could communicate in human language very fluently. As Zen heard what they said about him, his heart sank. Are you not satisfied with me? He asked piteously. The first king took a step forward. Of course not. Your bloodline power is of little use to us. What do you mean? Zen was stunned. If we devour Eternal Realm warriors, we will get the rewards engraved in their bloodlines, which can greatly enhance us and our entire race, the king said as he stretched out his sinewy hand to wrap Zen's neck in his sharp ebony claw. Zen was then pulled out of the dark brown claws. His neck was tethered, but his hands and feet were free. Clasping the king's arm with one hand, he kicked forward violently. Bang! Zen gritted his teeth. His kick did nothing. The king barely even flinched. You probably just reached the Eternal Realm. It's not bad for you to have such power, but unfortunately, your bloodline is too weak. Once he finished speaking, the king threw Zen backwards like a rag doll. Another 2 kings grabbed Zen from the left and the right. The last one grabbed a piece of earth from the wall and smeared it all over his body. The diabolic earth was the mother of the diabolic demon race. It also was honored as their sacred place. It was fine the outsiders intruded into the surface of the land of diabolic demons. As long as they were on the ground, they wouldn't irritate the diabolic demons and had the chance to escape. However, any creature that dared enter the diabolic earth was doomed. It was considered grave desecration of their sacred place. Zen was in great trouble now, since he even dug a path spanning dozens of miles long. After Zen's body was covered with the diabolic earth all over, two kings pulled him up and drilled upwards until they reached the surface. The strange thing was that, with his body covered with the diabolic earth, he could move freely in the earth without damaging it, just like the diabolic demons. It was as though he were water seeping through the mud. Chapter 3525, Intelligent Blood Vessels. The diabolic earth flowed quickly along Zen's body. It was as fluid as water, and as red as blood. The two kings of diabolic demons held on to Zen, dragging him all the way up. Soon they emerged from the ground. Zen quickly looked around him. Nearby, he caught sight of an object that looked like a triangular flower petal. The moment he confirmed his position, Zen's lips curved in a bitter smile. He had managed to dig for dozens of miles underground, but he dug in the opposite direction. He was now right in the center of the land of diabolic demons. "Drag him in," ordered the king of diabolic demons in the lead. The two kings who had Zen in their grasp dragged him towards the triangular petal. There was a series of sharp cracking sounds. As Zen came closer, he realized that the triangular petal was in actuality an enormous living creature. The triangle shape was the mouth of some kind of monster. It was ringed with huge spikes. The kings dragged Zen directly into the triangular petal, and tendrils as thick as fingers suddenly stretched out from the depths of the mouth. The tendrils snaked around Zen until they were wrapped tightly around his whole body. "Don't try to struggle," one of them told Zen. "This is the most painless way to die," said the other king. "If you try to struggle and escape, we will ensure that you suffer a fate worse than death." Zen calmly listened to their warnings. Curiously he asked, "Aren't you going to eat me?" The kings snorted with disgust. One of them snapped, "We don't eat humans." With that, they checked to see that he was secure in the grip of the tendrils. Then they turned and walked away from the triangular petal. The four kings of diabolic demons stood in a circle around the petal and Zen. They stretched out their thin arms, waving their sharp claws as they communicated to each other in their own language. As Zen was held immobile, the kings were soon accompanied by other diabolic demons, and they all began to sing and dance. "If they're not planning to eat me, then what? Is this petal mouth going to swallow me?" Zen asked the primeval Lord of Heaven. "Even if they devour you, they won't be able to inherit your bloodline power. So naturally they won't do such a thing," replied the primeval Lord of Heaven. "The formation of these death lands isn't a coincidence. The residents all have their own methods of sacrifice." Sacrifice. For a moment Zen was puzzled. Then he understood what the primeval Lord of Heaven meant. Swallowing eternal realm warriors. "Yes," admitted the primeval Lord of Heaven. He explained, "Sacrificing eternal realm warriors will increase the strength of their entire race, so every eternal realm warrior is the prey of all the other shore creatures in the three purities stage. And this is what makes the stage dangerous." Not much was known about the three purities stage in the Oneness Sky Palace. None of the warriors of the palace, even Libby, knew much about it. Libby was well read and had learned that the vicious beasts of the three purities stage had a deep enmity towards eternal realm warriors, but she did not know why. To whom did they make their sacrifices? The Four Spirits sect, Zen asked. "I am not wholly certain. I know that the recipient is outside the abstruse energy world, because whenever they offer up a sacrifice, they open a passageway that looks remarkably like the eternal scroll painting. I didn't know about the Four Spirits sect before, but now it seems like the most likely conclusion," said the primeval Lord of Heaven. Zen sighed. "So I was targeted to be their sacrifice as soon as I entered the three purities stage." He trailed off, sounding depressed. A series of strange cooing sounds suddenly issued from within the triangle petal. The noise grew louder. Abruptly, the corners of the triangle petal folded inwards, as the mouth closed in on itself. The spikes on the petal clustered together in the center of the mouth as darkness enveloped Zen completely. He could see only pitch blackness, but he heard a buzzing sound. The darkness lasted for only a moment. Then, to Zen's surprise, complex Sanskrit words began to appear on the inner walls of the petal. A beam of light shone upon him, cloaking his entire body in light. The beam shot upwards, into the depths of the sky, as though it was establishing a connection with the abstruse energy world. Meanwhile, more and more of the slender tendrils snaked around Zen's body. The tendrils had tips made of hollow thorns. These thorns were intended to pierce through skin to absorb all the blood in the body of the prey. Zen's lips tightened. "It seems that this so-called sacrifice is just a way to obtain the bloodline of the Eternal Realm warriors," he muttered. "Hey, you should make your move before you get absorbed." Normally, when Eternal Realm warriors merged with a bloodline, the two would become a single, fused whole. The power of the bloodline would be available for their use. But that was not the case for Zen. The ancestry-level bloodline wouldn't fuse with his body at all. It would only help Zen when it had no other choice. However, it refused to leave Zen's body as well. So the sacrifice method of the land of diabolic demons would surely enrage it. The sharp tips of the hollow thorns touched Zen's skin, about to pierce through. Suddenly, Zen felt a wave of blood power rising within his body. It felt like his blood itself surged under the surface of his skin. Zen's eyes widened. He had theorized that the ancestry-level bloodline would help him to forge a strong physical body, and that it would make it impossible for the thorns to penetrate his skin. His conjecture was wrong. Although he felt an enormous change had taken place, his body had not become stronger. The first batch of hollow thorns was blocked by the chaotic source spirits in his body. However, the chaotic source spirits could only absorb a limited amount of power, so one round of the violent attack from the thorns was enough to exhaust them. A second wave of thorns rushed towards Zen. At that moment, something strange happened. The large and small blood vessels in Zen's body wriggled and swayed like snakes. They seemed to be dodging the thorns. Like a warrior evading an opponent's sword, they managed to avoid every thrust of the hollow thorns that pierced Zen's skin. The thorns stabbed repeatedly at Zen. Each time, the hollow thorns remained empty. They could not absorb even a single drop of blood from him. Zen realized what was happening, but his face was screwed up as he fought to endure the pain of the stabbing thorns. His body had been repeatedly pierced and his skin was densely packed with holes. "Hey, you, this is too much," Zen said with groan. The primeval Lord of Heaven was speechless. Apparently, although the ancestry-level bloodline should have a better way to counteract the thorns, it had chosen this way instead. By doing so, it was exacting its own form of revenge on Zen. The triangle petal had attacked Zen relentlessly, but it still could not absorb any of his blood. In another wave of stabbing, the petal drove the hollow thorns as hard as it could into the depths of Zen's body. Although each thorn penetrated very deeply, the blood vessels in Zen's body continued to dodge the thorns, almost as though they were intelligent creatures who had anticipated each move of the thorns. Meanwhile, outside the triangle petal, there was a sense of uncertainty in the air. The four kings of diabolic demons and the others behind them were all kneeling in unison on the ground. Sacrificing was a significant and solemn act for diabolic demons, and they always kept absolutely quiet until the whole ceremony was completed. They knew the sacrifice was complete when they felt the power surging in their bodies. This would be strongest in the four kings, who stood to benefit the most from each sacrifice. Based on past experience, the sacrificial ceremony should end after around 5 minutes. But by now, at least 20 minutes had passed, and none of them felt any surge of power. It was still not done. On very rare occasions, the sacrifice took longer than 5 minutes. It happened only when the bloodline of the sacrificial object was very pure and of the highest quality. So at first, their anticipation rose at the delay, as they realized that this sacrifice would yield results that were better than usual. However, as time went by, the king of diabolic demons in the lead began to sense that something had gone wrong. Regardless of purity, the ceremony should not have lasted longer than 15 or 20 minutes at the most. What had happened inside the petal? By the time 30 minutes had passed, every single diabolic demon present at the ceremony began to feel restless and uneasy. There was still absolute silence, but everyone began looking furtively at the petal, or exchanging wordless glances with each other. Finally, the most important of the kings of diabolic demons made up his mind. He stood up, and all the demons who still knelt were shocked. They watched as the king began making his way to the petal to see what was going on. Chapter 3526, Poison. The altar formed by the triangular petal was a living being. As far as the kings of diabolic demons knew, none of the Eternal Realm warriors who were locked up in the altar had succeeded in breaking free. After all, they hadn't been able to catch the powerful Eternal Realm warriors. The ones they had caught were weak. But unfortunately for them, they had encountered the strange phenomenon that was Zen. The hollow thorns kept stabbing Zen and piercing into his body, but they couldn't get any blood. The altar seemed to sense the changes in Zen's body. As a result, more tendrils with hollow thorns began to grow. The hollow thorns remained in Zen's body once they pierced through it. More and more of them stung and pinched at him with every passing minute. It wasn't long before Zen's body became densely packed with thorns, making him look like a hedgehog. As the number of hollow thorns in Zen's body increased, little room was left for his blood vessels to move. "There is no way out. Why don't you fight back? Isn't this enough?" Zen said through gritted teeth. Zen's heart was divided into many parts, connected by a main meridian, to avoid the hollow thorns. "Who are you talking to? Why is your body so special?" The voice came from inside the living altar. I'm talking to myself, obviously, Zen said with a wry smile. My bloodline is special, or I would have torn you apart by now. You alone, the living altar sneered. I don't know how you've changed your blood vessels, but I will stab more thorns into your body. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. More hollow thorns appeared and shot towards Zen in unison. Zen smiled at this sight. Only by infuriating the living altar would the ancestry-level bloodline take the matter seriously. He would then suffer less. After the last wave of thorns got into Zen's body, the twisted blood vessels could no longer escape them and were pierced in many places. Since you're locked up here, there's no point in struggling, the living altar said as it began to greedily draw the blood from Zen's blood vessels. Zen was surprised as he saw this, his eyebrows rising. How was the ancestry-level bloodline allowing itself to be sucked out by the living altar? The bloodline in your body is strong and pure. I like it a lot. So delicious, the living altar said excitedly as it sucked on Zen's blood. But before it could finish talking, it stopped suddenly and let out a painful scream. The triangular petal around the altar turned gray. It was obvious that it was poisoned. When the gray turned black, deep holes began to appear on the petal in quick succession. The king in the lead approached and watched as the petal turned black and huge holes began to expand rapidly. It then drooped and withered just as quickly. All its life energy dissipated, and the light column that had soared into the sky disappeared. The king, as well as the three other ones behind, was stunned. All the diabolic demons were still kneeling in devotion, their heads bowed. They didn't realize that their altar had rotted and died. What happened? The king nearest to the petal stuttered. In that moment, Zen struggled out of the tendrils and began to pull the hollow thorns out of his body. The densely packed holes brought great pain to him, but they were not serious wounds. As the green light flashed on the surface of his body, they all began to heal, one after the other. This altar has eaten something that shouldn't be eaten, Zen said, smiling as he fixed the king with a firm gaze. You did all this? The king asked in disbelief. He couldn't believe that a human warrior at the eternal realm could destroy the altar. Well, yes, Zen said, nodding. He was sure that the ancestry-level bloodline was part of him. The king was now positively fuming. I'll teach you a lesson, he said, waving his sharp claws as he charged at Zen. Time to make a move? Zen asked, staring at the king. The ancestry-level bloodline knew it couldn't let Zen fight the king of diabolic demons alone. So it began to surge within his body. A burning sensation erupted at the fingertips of Zen's right hand. It felt like flames were dancing on his skin. He subconsciously raised his hand and pointed at the king. Puff! Zen's fingers began to expand and soon were boring into the king's chest. The king looked at Zen, confused, his body trembling. Seconds later, he fell to the ground, motionless. Zen retracted his fingers as the king fell. Zen looked at his fingers, surprised. This time, the ancestry-level bloodline had only transformed his fingers, but it had been surprisingly useful. But the moment the king fell, the mud beside him arched suddenly into a pointed pile. The pile quickly changed colors from red to black, and then turned into the king. You want to kill a diabolic demon on the diabolic earth? You dream too much, the king sneered. Zen had discovered this characteristic of the diabolic demons while fighting them underground. No matter how many pieces they were cut into, they would always be able to revive themselves. It hadn't occurred to Zen that they could become immortal with the help of the diabolic earth. The fact that the four kings had the ability to be reborn over and over again spelled trouble. Zen would find it difficult to escape the land of diabolic demons. The king walked towards Zen. He had only taken 2 steps when Zen discovered that with every step he took, a black footprint was stamped on the scarlet diabolic earth. The color on your body is fading, Zen pointed out. The king looked down and his face froze. The black color on his body spread along his feet and into the diabolic earth, like a dye dripping into water. Poison, the king roared, jumping up into the air and trying to fly. But his body suddenly felt powerless and he fell to the ground once again, this time, merging into the diabolic earth. He could still be resurrected since the diabolic earth could help him through the process for an infinite number of times. The poison on Zen's fingertips, however, hadn't been aimed at the king, but at the diabolic earth. Our diabolic earth has been poisoned. Dig away the black earth. Kill that brat first, the other 3 kings screamed, flustered. Their greatest crisis was not that they were facing Zen, but the poison that had spread throughout the diabolic earth. The diabolic demons rushed to dig the black diabolic earth out. But the earth they dug out merely rose high into the air and fell to the ground again. What was worse was that the black poison had spread not only across the surface of the diabolic earth, but also deep underground. Chapter 3527, Determine the location. As the ordinary diabolic demons came into contact with the poisonous diabolic earth, they also turned black and quickly fell to the ground. Originally, these diabolic demons could be resurrected. However, as soon as they revived, they were poisoned to death again. Generally, ordinary diabolic demons could easily resurrect for up to 3 times. After that, they would have a really hard time recovering their bodies. The powerful ones could be revived more than thrice, but the diabolic earth that they used to revive themselves were tainted with a vicious poison. Thus, whenever they resurrected, they couldn't escape the fate of dying again. Even the king wasn't able to save himself when he came into contact with the diabolic earth. The other 3 kings were lucky to prevent themselves from making contact with the diabolic earth. As soon as they realized that it was severely poisoned, they immediately leapt and floated in the air. As the black spots spread at an incredible rate, their faces darkened and they were horrified at the scene. All of the diabolic demons were actually a whole, and their core was the diabolic earth below. No matter how powerful their enemies were, it was always difficult to invade the land of diabolic demons. There was no way to conquer a land that was guarded by immortal beings. Furthermore, there were tens of thousands of diabolic demons that would welcome those who dared to enter their land. As long as the diabolic demons were given enough time to expand the diabolic earth, they would be able to join the supreme pure realm in the near future. No one expected that the diabolic demons would encounter such a great crisis. Rumble, rumble, the land that turned to black began vibrating. Then, the ground not far away from Zen swelled and bulged high until a blood-red monster finally drilled out from it. However, only half of its original form was seen. Immediately after, it also turned to black and disintegrated like the other diabolic demons. In reality, the diabolic earth itself was also a living creature. After it was severely poisoned, it started struggling so hard. The huge creature that got out from the ground and instantly disintegrated was actually an incarnation of the diabolic earth. After about 2 hours, the black spots had already spread to the edge of the land of diabolic demons, about hundreds of miles away from where Zen was. Near the diabolic earth's edge, there were clusters of pale yellow plants growing on it. At the same time, there were also a few striped deer covetously keeping an eye on these yellow plants, which were their favorite food. However, the current situation of the land of diabolic demons was extremely dangerous. An ominous atmosphere kept the animals from getting any closer. Perhaps, the deer that found the yellow plants hadn't eaten for a few days, which was why their hunger triumphed over their fear as they rushed to the plants without hesitation. At this moment, about 7 diabolic demons suddenly surfaced from the nearby red soil and surrounded the group of deer. It turned out that the yellow plants were actually bait placed by the diabolic demons to lure other creatures. However, just as they pounced on the deer, the black poison quickly spread under their feet. Before they even touched the deer, their bodies collapsed, and the frightened deer fled in all directions. After collapsing and recovering for a few times, the diabolic demons completely died. The originally blood-red diabolic earth was now completely enveloped in darkness. The frightened group of deer waited and observed for a long time if there was any diabolic demon that was still lurking. Upon seeing the quiet land, they happily jumped into the area and chewed on the yellow plants. Strangely enough, when they came into contact with the black diabolic earth, where the yellow plants were, nothing bad happened to them. It turned out that the poison that Zen introduced into the diabolic earth could only affect the diabolic demons. The 3 remaining kings floated in the air and glared at Zen with furious faces. Zen had destroyed everything, including the altar, the race, and even the foundation of the diabolic earth. They were fuming with rage and wanted to get back at him as soon as they could. "Human brat, come up here and I'll give you a swift death. Just you wait, and I'm going to devour your flesh. I advise you to leave the land of diabolic demons while you still can." The poison that contaminated the diabolic earth was so intense that it could instantly destroy and kill the diabolic demons. Even the kings didn't dare to come down and only shouted in disdain while they were up in the air. Zen just smiled at them. He slowly dug his toe into the ground, and violently kicked upwards. Splash! The black soil quickly spread towards the sky. The 3 kings were caught off guard and were scared out of their wits. They immediately flew up to a higher place as fast as they could. However, one of the kings was a bit slow, and wasn't able to dodge the black soil. Arg! Immediately after, the king fell from the sky and crashed into the black soil. In a matter of seconds, his whole body disintegrated without a trace. This time, however, the king didn't come back to life. The resurrection ability of the diabolic demons came from the diabolic earth. Since it was now engulfed by the deadly poison, the diabolic demons had lost their ability to be resurrected, and even their kings were no exception. After that, Zen ignored the remaining 2 kings above him. He headed north as soon as he determined the direction he needed to take. However, the 2 kings still followed him from behind, keeping a safe distance. They didn't have the slightest intention of letting Zen go. They were just waiting for an opportunity to attack him as soon as he left the diabolic earth. It'll be a little troublesome if they keep following me. I need to lose them somehow. After thinking for a while, he finally knew what his plan would be. He immediately dug a hole in the area and hopped inside it. The 2 kings didn't expect that Zen would do such a thing. They didn't dare follow him into the hole because their lives would be in grave danger. After crossing a wide distance inside the diabolic earth, Zen came out on the other side and didn't sense the presence of the kings. As I move north from the center of the land of diabolic demons, I will be able to see 2 isolated peaks. The first one is the spirit disappearing peak, and the other one is the soul dissipating peak. Oh, there they are, Zen said as he stared at the 2 peaks in the distance. As he was approaching, he saw 2 mountains were standing in an arc on the left side and on the right side. One was pure silver in color, and the other was golden. According to the primeval Lord of Heaven, these 2 mountains were indestructible. Every chaotic era, an alien space door would open at the place between the 2 mountains. Many other shore creatures and eternal realm warriors in the Grand Pure Realm would gather and break into it to explore the area. The door would only open once every chaotic era, so he couldn't wait for that time to happen. After finding a well-hidden corner, Zen quietly chanted the illusion-breaking rune and instantly withdrew from the Grand Pure Realm. He decided to let the snake goddess and Fuxi know where he was. The people of the Oneness Sky Palace hoped that Zen could rescue Eastern Emperor Tai and Yasmin as soon as possible. To be able to do it, Zen needed to meet with the snake goddess and Fuxi first. The fact that Zen had entered the 3 Purities stage was a big deal for the Oneness Sky Palace and the Pear Hill. The Pear Hill, the Oneness Sky Palace, and even several Chaos Ancient Gods paid close attention to Zen's journey. Normally, as long as one didn't encounter any sort of trouble, they would choose to wake up as soon as they arrived at the Grand Pure Realm. However, Zen was delayed, which made the masters in the Pear Hill a little worried. They started to think that something must have gone wrong after he arrived at the Grand Pure Realm. Fortunately, Zen safely left the other shore and opened his eyes. He perceived that the dark haze peak suddenly became noisy as he woke up. Zen has finally woken up. Really? Then that means he's safe. I told you that we need not worry. Fuxi was standing beside him and quickly asked, "Where have you been transmitted by the stage and passage? You were out for quite a long time." Zen looked around first and saw number 9527, who was also beside him. He put on a helpless expression because of the number of people that were present. Zen was a very important figure now that even Chaos Ancient Gods visited him several times. All of these people even wanted to sleep there every day just to check up on him. There was no way that number 9527 could stop them. After Zen answered Fuxi, there was a sudden silence in the entire Dark Haze Peak. They couldn't believe what Zen had just said. All of their faces were immediately filled with horror as they heard its name. Did he just say, the land of diabolic demons? Chapter 3528, The Heavenly Thunder Plain. For the vast majority of Eternal Realm warriors, the Grand Pure Realm was equivalent to Stage 33 because they would never be able to go to the Supreme Pure Realm. The land of diabolic demons was the most dangerous place in the Grand Pure Realm where survival was nigh impossible. Each and every Eternal Realm warrior who dared pass through the stage and passage would have to risk their lives. This led to a lot of them refusing to explore the 3 Purities stage altogether. Instead, they chose to stay in the Grand Plain stage where it was safe and they'd be able to stay long there. Did you fall on the edge of the land of diabolic demons and escape? Fuxi asked. Zen had actually fallen into the inside of the diabolic earth, which should be the worst situation. But Zen just nodded. I was able to escape. I'm opposite the spirit disappearing peak and the soul dissipating peak now. You and the snake goddess can go there and easily find me. Opposite the spirit disappearing peak and the soul dissipating peak. The snake goddess repeated. You are not far away from the land of diabolic demons. That place is still very dangerous. Zen merely shrugged. They shouldn't be able to find me. The entirety of the land of diabolic demons had since turned into a dead area, which would make it difficult for the 2 remaining kings to find him. The snake goddess and Fuxi exchanged glances. It would be quite risky to venture so close to the land of diabolic demons, but since it was Zen, they definitely had to go. Don't go to the other shore for the time being, Fuxi told him. You can go back after we arrive at the spirit disappearing peak and the soul dissipating peak. Soon enough, the snake goddess and Fuxi sat cross-legged, opposite Zen, and entered the other shore together. Zen sensed the fear in their hearts, yet he couldn't help but admire their willingness to take the risk with no evident hesitation. The two had stayed in the Grand Pure Realm for a really long time, so they were naturally very familiar with it. Fuxi's augury dog was also of great help since he was able to foretell the dangers that hid in every corner. This ability surely came in handy to warn them in advance of any untoward incident heading their way. After half a day's journey, Fuxi and the snake goddess arrived at the west side of the land of diabolic demons. A strange feeling rose in their chests as they looked towards that forsaken land in the distance. Did the color of the land of diabolic demons change? Fuxi asked, confusion evident on his face. The snake goddess could only stare at the horizon, lost in thought. For many years, the diabolic earth was blood red. In fact, it was said that it was actually a living creature, and the diabolic demons that roamed the land were birthed by the earth itself. Since it had turned black, then did that mean that the diabolic earth had become stronger? Of course, it wasn't the time to instigate an investigation. They might be outstanding Eternal Realm warriors, but the land of diabolic demons was a scary place, even for them. We should go north and make a safe detour. North, and then go parallel to the land of diabolic demons. We'll be safe and reach Zen in no time. The two ventured forth once they came into an agreement. The augury dog followed closely behind Fuxi as they journeyed on. This is one of the most dangerous places in the Grand Pure Realm, yet I don't sense any danger at all. It's quite strange, he muttered in observation. Last time the augury dog followed Fuxi into the land of diabolic demons, he had spent the entire time urging Fuxi to leave due to the extreme danger he felt from all over the place. This time, though, he felt no danger at all. The entire land of diabolic demons felt peaceful in its dead silence. It is quite strange. Look, the snake goddess said as she pointed towards the distance. Dozens of deer were feasting on plants on the black diabolic earth peacefully. There were no signs of any diabolic demons around. Those diabolic demons have a strong sense of territory. They would never allow deer to approach their land. Where in the world are they? Fuxi asked in concern due to the strangeness of the situation. The two companions' hearts sank at a sudden realization. Is it the element spirit civilization or the nihility race? The snake goddess murmured with a frown. Diabolic demons expanded their territory at an extremely slow rate and usually stayed within the diabolic earth in fierce protectiveness of their land. The element spirit civilization and the nihility race wouldn't dare to provoke them, would they? Aside from these two forces, there wasn't really anyone else who could wipe out the diabolic demons. Halfway through their journey, Fuxi tried to approach the edge of the diabolic earth but still did not see any diabolic demons. The situation was very strange, but they came here for one thing only. Once they arrived at Zen's location, they immediately retreated from the other shore. When they returned, the snake goddess was quick to ask Zen about the situation. Zen, did you see any diabolic demons when you fell into the land of diabolic demons? The two waited for his answer with bated breath. Of course, Zen answered readily. The snake goddess's eyes flashed. Were they alive? She specified. Zen nodded. Yes. Then can you explain to us why all the diabolic demons in the entire land seem to have disappeared, or perhaps died? Fuxi asked. His voice had been loud and attracted other people's attention. What did he say? All the diabolic demons died. Then that means the land is now abandoned. Isn't that good then? The Eternal Realm warriors will now feel safer. Zen sported a faint smile on his face. Not all of them died. There are still 2 kings left, but I don't know where they are. 2 kings, the snake goddess repeated. What about the others? Zen shrugged nonchalantly. I poisoned them to death. Fuxi already kind of suspected Zen had something to do with the sudden disappearance of the diabolic demons, but it was still surreal to hear him admit it in person. He had to take a deep breath to stabilize his heart. The young man had just arrived, yet he had already exterminated all the residents of the most dangerous place in the Grand Pure Realm. Even the element spirit civilization and the nihility race would be impressed if they heard this. This matter must be kept secret, the snake goddess announced to those on the dark haze peak. Zen was currently a thorn in the two Foss's side. If they knew what he did, then they would feel threatened and do something to the young man. After the snake goddess gave the order to keep things quiet, she and Fuxi returned to the other shore with Zen. Once inside the other shore, Fuxi looked back at the land of diabolic demons and confirmed that there were indeed no more diabolic demons left. He sighed and took his companions to the place where Eastern Emperor Tai and Yasemin were trapped. After passing the spirit disappearing peak and the soul dissipating peak, they arrived at the southeast part of the Grand Pure Realm. Here, they soon heard deep, rumbling sounds. The heavenly thunder plane is right in front of us. It's not safe. We should take a detour, Fuxi warned. Crossing the plane will save us a lot of time though, but then again it might be too risky, the snake goddess agreed with a look of regret. Zen, however, thought differently. The heavenly thunder plane, we might be able to cross it. Back when he was in the blooming jade stage, the primeval Lord of Heaven's imprisoning lightning left a deep impression on him. He knew that it could perfectly restrain the thunderbolts and lightning here and even help them obtain the powerful solid lightning powder. They couldn't just let this opportunity pass them by. Chapter 3529, The Monsters in the Door. Do you know how we can deal with the thunderbolts? Fuxi asked as he pointed at the distance. Right as he pointed, a huge thunderbolt fell from the sky and hit the plane below. After endless hits from the thunderbolts, the entire heavenly thunder plane was charred to a crisp. Just then, Zen raised his hand and a faint, purple glow radiated from his palm. The purple light grew more and more intense, it was the imprisoning lightning. The primeval Lord of Heaven of the human race once led all the human elites across the heavenly thunder plane just by relying on this imprisoning lightning. As he spoke, Zen floated forward and landed right in the center of the heavenly thunder plane. The surface of the heavenly thunder plane was very flat, so anything above its horizon was struck by lightning. Once Zen's toes touched the ground, he quickly attracted the thunder. Boom! All of a sudden, a thunder dragon descended and headed straight for Zen's right hand. However, Zen's right hand flashed fiercely with the purple imprisoning lightning. The moment the dragon came into contact with his palm, it disintegrated into brown ashes and scattered under Zen's feet. Fuxi's and the snake goddess's eyes widened and their jaws dropped. This was the first time they had ever witnessed this. It seems that the light solidified the thunderbolt, right? The snake goddess asked. As she was extremely sensitive to energy, she could sense it even if it happened within a second. Zen nodded as he carefully collected the solid lightning powder and handed it to the snake goddess. This is the solid lightning powder. After the primeval Lord of Heaven had accumulated enough solid lightning powder, he used it to kill the divine retribution beast. The divine retribution beast. The human race killed a divine retribution beast. Fuxi and the snake goddess couldn't help but gasp in shock. Although they knew the human race was strong in the past and could even resist the element spirit civilization, they did not expect that the primeval Lord of Heaven had once killed the divine retribution beast. As the snake goddess examined the solid lightning powder in her hands, curiosity filled her thoughts. Suddenly, a shadow of snake goddess silently drilled into the solid lightning powder. Sizzle! A streak of lightning flashed in her cupped hands. Woof, woof, woof. The augury dog behind Fuxi barked ferociously at the sight of the lightning. Toss it out, Zen shouted. However, the snake goddess was already prepared for any mishaps. With a slight shake of her hand, she threw out the solid lightning powder as if nothing happened. Splash! In the same moment, a round thunderball around the size of a water tank bloomed and emitted a blinding light before them. The lightning lasted for a while until it gradually dissipated. Fuxi's eyes twitched as he felt the formidable power. If the snake goddess was a second slower, half of her body would have been burned to a crisp. A handful of solid lightning powder was already so powerful. What would happen if they accumulated more than this? And now, they could not only easily cross the heavenly thunder plane, but also accumulate enough such powder. Soon enough, the three of them set off for the depths of the heavenly thunder plane. Boom, boom, boom. Only a handful of thunderbolts were on the edge of the heavenly thunder plane, but the closer they got to the depths of the plane, the denser the thunderbolts became. As they moved for another 100 miles, the thunderbolts in the sky eventually became a thick thunder curtain. Any creature sucked into the thunder curtain would be turned into ashes just by the thunderbolts. Nonetheless, Zen raised his right hand and emitted the strong imprisoning lightning for their protection. Any thunderbolt that came close to them, no matter how thick or thin, turned into dust. Meanwhile, Fuxi collected the powder for future use. Primeval Lord of Heaven, were you able to absorb all the thunderbolts in the heavenly thunder plane before? How did you make it? Zen asked politely. He walked casually as he held out the imprisoning lightning in his hand, making the thunderbolts into powder each time they struck. If my real body came here, the imprisoning lightning released could illuminate the entire heavenly thunder plane, the primeval Lord of Heaven responded with a humble smile. Illuminating the entire heavenly thunder plane. Zen took a deep breath. The primeval Lord of Heaven was a powerful warrior and was not one to be underestimated. He possessed the same level of power as the Grand Master of Heaven. Crack, crack, crack. After traveling for another 6 or 7 miles, the three eventually arrived at the core area of the heavenly thunder plain. The thunderbolts fell to the ground like rainwater. It was a terrifying sight. Their safe place was under the imprisoning lightning Zen had released. No matter how many thunderbolts struck, they were turned into solid lightning powder. After all, the imprisoning lightning was not the enemy of the thunder. It could just alter the thunderbolts into another form. As Fuxi concentrated on gathering the solid lightning powder, the augury dog beside him barked. Though the creature was frightened by the heavenly thunder plane, he was calm under the protection of the imprisoning lightning. His barks only meant that he sensed something else. Zen, the snake goddess, and Fuxi looked to the direction the augury dog barked in. There seemed to be nothing there. What's wrong? Fuxi asked the augury dog. The augury dog lay prostrate on the ground vigilantly. I don't know. It seems that something dangerous is approaching. Even the other shore creatures of the Grand Pure Realm can't survive here. You're probably just sensitive with all these thunderbolts, said Fuxi. Even so, the augury dog's eyes still squinted at the direction as he sensed something odd. They continued their journey for another 3 or 4 miles and they were about to go through the core area of the heavenly thunder plain. However, the augury dog suddenly dropped to the ground again and whimpered in fear. The last time when the augury dog was this frightened, there had been danger right around the corner. What's wrong? As soon as Fuxi asked, a door suddenly appeared a few feet away and 2 long-haired monsters stormed out from the door. The 2 hairy monsters growled and rushed towards the 3 of them. The thunderbolts fell like an unending storm and hit the bodies of the beasts. It seemed that their fur protected them from all kinds of thunderbolts. Fuxi was still busy collecting the solid lightning powder when he caught sight of the 2 monsters. The long-haired monsters grabbed him, about to drag him into the flashes of lightning. The intentions of the monsters were not their only worry now. The thunderbolts in the core area of the heavenly thunder plane were already powerful enough that Fuxi wouldn't last half a minute there. The moment Fuxi's arms were pulled out of the range of the imprisoning lightning, his hair was even singed by the lightning. Seeing that Fuxi was about to be dragged out, the snake goddess and Zen grabbed Fuxi by his arms to drag him back into the range of the imprisoning lightning. Fuxi resembled a rope in a tug of war, being pulled on both ends. The snake goddess was not that strong, while Zen's power was not like it used to be. With their combined efforts, Fuxi was motionless like a pillar. The 2 monsters also seemed surprised. Their intention was only to take one person and inquire about the situation of the Grand Pure Realm, but none among the 3 were weaker than them. Here, Fuxi suffered great pain. His bones were crushed, especially his backbone which was nearly broken. If the strength continuously increased, he'd be torn into 2 pieces. Suddenly, the augury dog pounced and emitted a faint bronze light from his mouth. He roared fiercely right at the 2 long-haired monsters. For some reason, the 2 long-haired monsters were extremely afraid of the augury dog's roar. When they heard the dog's barks, they quickly threw their hands up and retreated into the door. The moment the door was shut, the door disappeared. Chapter 3530, Flaming Maple Forest. After Zen and the snake goddess pulled Fuxi back to the area covered by the imprisoning lightning, Fuxi lay flat on the ground, catching his breath. Lightning had burnt the muscles on his arms into gray powder. Surprisingly, he didn't feel any pain at all. It was fortunate enough that only half of his arms stretched out from the imprisoning lightning. If he was pulled out a little more, his head would have also been struck by thunderbolts, and he would instantly be killed. The snake goddess held out her hand, revealing a branch in her palm. The energy of the shadow of snake goddess had been insinuated into the branch. The branch then sprouted to life, showing 2 beautiful emerald leaves. She picked the leaves and gently wrapped them around Fuxi's arms. Fuxi's charred arms began to recover, bright red flesh, healthy muscles and new skin growing there. In less than a minute, the wounds had been completely healed. After the snake goddess cured Fuxi, she saw Zen staring blankly at the distance. She asked curiously, "What's wrong? Do you know those long-haired monsters?" The snake goddess was experienced and knowledgeable, but she had never seen such strange creatures before. They could block the thunderbolts and lightning only using their long hair and were also capable of opening a door at will. Was this a new force that appeared in the 3 purities stage? I don't know those long-haired monsters. Zen shook his head, but I know that door, he continued. The door seems to be made of the space rule. Have you ever seen it before? The snake goddess asked. Zen nodded. Do you know the little girl beside Madame Yasmin? He uttered again. You mean Dorothy, right? The snake goddess asked. Although Dorothy was only a disciple of the Origin Mountain, she was the apple of Yasmin's eye. Since the snake goddess was gifted with a retentive memory, she couldn't forget Dorothy. Yes, Zen nodded. After Madame Yasmin was trapped, Dorothy disappeared, and everyone in the Oneness Sky Palace couldn't find her. Later, the Oneness Sky Palace moved to the Pear Hill, but she still hasn't shown up. The snake goddess frowned, her eyebrows wrinkling slightly. She wondered why Zen mentioned Dorothy, and what she had to do with the long-haired monsters. When I entered stage 1 of the other shore along with Dorothy, I used the Great Dominance technique once. Upon taking control of her, I saw a door in her mind which was almost the same as that door. Zen pointed at place where the door had just disappeared. The snake goddess and Fuxi were surprised by what they heard. Others only knew that Dorothy had some unique talents. She had a high status in the Oneness Sky Palace with the favor and care of Yasmin, who was of the Eternal Realm. Now it seemed that Dorothy kept more secrets than the others had known. That door had always been closed. After her disappearance, it could be opened freely. There must be some connection between the two. Could it be that Dorothy had opened this door? If the situation had not been too tense earlier, Zen would have tried to communicate with the two long-haired monsters. But now, he couldn't search for them. Zen started walking over with the snake goddess and Fuxi. He reached out his hand and touched the air, trying to locate the remaining power of space. However, under the attack of the thunderbolts, it had already dissipated. Perhaps the ancestry-level bloodline had a way to find the door, but the ancestry-level bloodline always hesitated even if Zen asked for its help during a critical moment. It was simply unrealistic to expect voluntary help from it. Are you thinking that she probably entered the door? The snake goddess asked, almost seeing through Zen's thoughts. Zen nodded in agreement. She is not even at the Holy Soul Realm. There is no reason for her to escape from the Oneness Sky Palace. There are still many unrevealed secrets of the other shore, and it isn't too strange that we couldn't find her here. However, since this door has appeared, some secrets shall be discovered sooner or later, the snake goddess comforted Zen in a low voice. Fuxi squinted at Zen when he listened to the conversation at the moment. He then continued to concentrate on collecting the solid lightning powder. As they passed through the core area of the heavenly thunder plane, the augury dog displayed a state of calm and tranquility. They kept moving north, safely passing through the entirety of the plane. If all of the solid lightning powder is activated, its resulting power will be unimaginable. Fuxi exclaimed as he stored the solid lightning powder in his space ring. He was pleased to gain an unexpected harvest. Such an amount of solid lightning powder could be used as a trump card. A red forest stood in front of them as they went farther from the heavenly thunder plane. The flaming maple trees 1,000 feet high towered over them, densely lighting up the whole area. The scenery was magnificent and magically colorful. It's so beautiful. What kind of deathland is this? Zen asked, expressing his confusion. The more beautiful and peculiar a place appeared, the more dangerous it was. Zen concluded this after all that he had gone through. This time, his guess was proved wrong. The snake goddess smiled and said, the flaming maple forest is considered a safe area within the Three Purities stage. No one will attack us here. How is that possible? Zen asked curiously. Look. The snake goddess stretched out her finger and pointed at a distant space in the flaming maple forest. A beam of energy of the shadow of snake goddess spiraled out from her finger and drilled into the ground. As the energy beam drilled deeper, all the flaming maple trees began to shake, and a heavy gust of energy rose from the forest. The strong wave of energy made everyone gasp for air. On the contrary, the augury dog was strangely quiet. He was aware that the snake goddess test was safe, and this pressure was naturally a warning from the flaming maple forest. Whoosh! Even though the snake goddess move was purely a test, a maple leaf started shooting towards her, hitting her body. The snake goddess didn't bother to dodge because she knew she could not. Instinctively, she touched the blood oozing from her chest. Beneath her hand, the wound started to heal. She turned to Zen and asked calmly, now, do you understand? They attack whoever fights here. Is that right? Zen asked. Yes, the snake goddess nodded. Thus, it is also considered a shelter within the Three Purities stage. Many Eternal Realm warriors enter the flaming maple forest to seek protection after an adventure in the Grand Pure Realm. The Three Purities stage has more than one shelter. This is another reason why the latecomers were able to contend against the element spirit civilization in the Three Purities stage, the primeval Lord of Heaven said in Zen's mind. In the beginning, when the primeval Lord of Heaven led the human race into the Three Purities stage, he had also taken refuge in these shelters. The real primeval Lord of Heaven and the others were now trapped in a similar shelter. Don't release any energy in the shelter, or you will suffer a great loss. After the snake goddess warning, the three of them continued to explore the flaming maple forest. According to the snake goddess, many creatures were hidden in the vast forest. Some of them were eternal realm warriors from the Grand Plane stage, while some were from the Grand Pure realm. These creatures carefully maintained a distance from each other. When they saw the three of them arrive, the creatures quietly left, hiding in the depths of the forest. For everyone, passing through a safe place was a piece of cake. Zen was also relaxed, but the ancestry-level bloodline in his body did not seem to intend for him to relax. Chapter 3531, Fight Hand to Hand. Not long after they entered the flaming maple forest, Zen was shocked to feel a slight wave of energy that was coming from the ancestry-level bloodline. Even though the energy fluctuation was extremely slight, it was still enough to cause a reaction in the flaming maple forest. Whoosh! In an instant, the entire flaming maple forest, which covered an area of a few miles, began to sway violently. It seemed that the shining maple leaves might fly and attack them at any time. As Fuxi and the snake goddess saw the scene, their bodies froze and their faces turned pale. If the flaming maple forest really started attacking them, there would be no escaping it, and they would die a horrible death. The other shore creatures that had been hiding behind the tree trunks somewhere in the forest thought that someone reckless had come. In fear that they would be caught in the trouble, they rapidly fled before the trees started attacking. But after a few seconds, the light on the maple leaves gradually dimmed, and the energy reaction of the flaming maple forest subsided. When everything calmed down, Fuxi took a deep breath and yelled, "What do you think you're doing?" Earlier, the snake goddess had strictly warned Zen not to release any form of energy because that would awaken and disturb the flaming maple forest. She knew that Zen wouldn't deliberately do something stupid. "I'm sorry. The ancestry-level bloodline just got a little bit out of control that it caused an energy fluctuation," Zen explained with an apologetic face. Fortunately, the ancestry-level bloodline didn't fluctuate further, or else they would have definitely died. After a while, the ancestry-level bloodline stayed calm and showed no sign of making any trouble. Then, the three of them continued to go deeper into the flaming maple forest. The flaming maple forest is located in the western part of the Grand Pure realm and extends all the way up to the Divine River. "That's where Madame Yasmin and Eastern Emperor Tai are trapped," the snake goddess told Zen. Previously, Zen didn't have the qualifications to enter stage 33, so they didn't bother telling him the details about the situation of Yasmin and Eastern Emperor Tai. The Divine River was a mysterious body of water that ran through the Three Purities stage. It was said that the source of the river was at the Jade Pure realm. Then, it ran through the Supreme Pure realm and extended to the Grand Pure realm. Both Eternal Realm warriors and other shore creatures were extremely interested in the Divine River because of the things that they could find there. These precious items were often washed down from the Supreme Pure realm or the Jade Pure realm. Everyone had been fighting real hard for these treasures for the longest time. Of course, the river was also accompanied by extreme dangers. Countless creatures had already died there since ancient times. However, they still risked their lives for the chance of acquiring a great fortune. So, they are trapped at the bottom of the Divine River. What happened? Did someone chase them down there? Zen curiously asked. That's right. At that time, Mahoney of the New Moon race set up a trap and eventually succeeded in luring Madame Yasmin there. Later, Eastern Emperor Tai also got trapped because he came and attempted to save Madame Yasmin, Fuxi explained. What's with the river? Why can't they escape it? Zen inquired again. It's kind of hard to explain. It'll be better to see it with your own eyes, the snake goddess said after failing to think of a better way to explain. After hearing that, Zen didn't ask any more questions. He just followed the snake goddess and Fuxi through the flaming maple forest. The flaming maple forest was so vast and peculiar that it was difficult to tell which way they should go as they went deeper into it. Without a proper guide, one might easily get lost within it. Fortunately, Fuxi seemed to be rather familiar with the area. Every now and then, he would just take out the 8 diagrams disc to quickly determine the direction that they needed to tread. About 4 hours later, Fuxi suddenly stopped under 3 tall flaming maple trees. Wait a moment, I'll be right back, the snake goddess said and instantly left the other shore. In less than 5 minutes, the snake goddess reappeared. From the shadow of the trees nearby, a figure quietly emerged. It was a large ear mouse, King Yayan. King Yayan, it's nice to meet you again, Zen said as he cupped his hands towards it. Oh, no need to be so formal. It's my honor to be of help, King Yayan said with a faint smile. Previously, Zen had devoured the Chaos Ancient God Lamont alive. Everyone present, including King Yayan, was utterly shocked. If it weren't for Zen's help at that critical moment, King Yayan and most of its subordinates might have died miserably. So, how's the situation of the flaming maple forest right now? Fuxi asked straightforwardly. Among the members of the ear mouse race, only King Yayan could enter the three purities stage at will. However, their race boasted the advantage of easily collecting information. Actually, some time ago, a lot of people were withdrawn from this place. But just recently, the element spirit civilization sent a lot of people again for monitoring, King Yayan reported. Fuxi furrowed his brows and asked, does that mean they know about our plan to rescue Madame Yasmin and Eastern Emperor Tai? That's the only explanation I could think of, King Yayan replied. As a disciple of the Oneness Sky Palace, Zen had the responsibility to save Eastern Emperor Tai. The element spirit civilization clearly knew about this, so after Zen entered the three purities stage, they wasted no time and sent more people to guard the flaming maple forest. Then, is there any way that we can avoid them? The snake goddess asked. If possible, she wanted to save the two without facing the element spirit civilization. I'm not sure, but it will be very difficult, King Yayan honestly said. They have been waiting on the river courses. There's no other way but to swim in the divine river. But it is still very difficult to not be discovered. All right then, take us there, the snake goddess said in a soft voice. After they had walked through the dense flaming maple forest for quite some time, they heard loud sounds of water rippling from the distance. Soon after, the divine river appeared in front of them. Looking at the mysterious dark green river, Zen suddenly realized that it was made up of the soul interdicting water, just like the Sanskrit light stage, but the soul interdicting water contained in the river was much thicker. He realized that the reason why Eastern Emperor Tai and Yasmin couldn't escape was that they were soaked in the soul interdicting water present in the divine river. Come on, more, kill him, the piece of gold and silver bone will be all yours. They heard people shouting from the distance. When Zen and the others got closer to the river, they saw two huge creatures, about 40 feet tall, brawling and fighting each other in an open space in the flaming maple forest. Hey, what are they doing? There was a mixed expression of astonishment and confusion on Zen's face. They're fighting, of course, the snake goddess replied with a playful smile. The one who wins can take the piece of gold and silver bone for himself. She then pointed to the side of the open space, where there was a stone table. On top of the table sat the piece of gold and silver bone that she was referring to. It was most probably salvaged from the divine river. It was known that if there was a conflict in the process of salvaging, they needed to solve the dispute through hand-to-hand combat. The one who won would have the right to claim the items at stake. I see that, but that's not my point. I mean, isn't it forbidden to fight in the flaming maple forest? Zen was further confused. It's not forbidden to fight. What's forbidden is the use of energy, Fuxi corrected him. Likewise, we won't be attacked by the maple leaves if we just run, jump, and even fight hand-to-hand, he continued. Thud, splat. Just then, a muffled sound came from afar. One of the two gigantic creatures was seized by the throat. With a sudden mighty pull, his head was completely separated from his body. The more powerful creature smashed the opponent's head to the ground and crushed it. Afterward, the winner raised his hand and roared in front of the rowdy crowd. Yes, that's it. The crowd burst into loud cheers. They actually enjoyed this kind of scene. Fighting hand-to-hand is allowed, huh? Zen softly uttered as he raised his eyebrows. Well, this rule has always been disadvantageous to the human race. There are only few humans who are strong enough to battle those kinds of strong creatures, Fuxi said indifferently, shrugging his shoulders. Even if the humans were lucky enough to spot a precious item in the divine river, this would always be taken by the other shore creatures because they didn't have the strength to fight them. On the other hand, the yellow thirk and the divine farmer were protected by the element spirit civilization, so they had the advantage in this area. After all, a large number of other shore creatures followed the element spirit civilization. Chapter 3532, The Misty River Race. After killing his opponent, the winner stood in the forest glade without moving. He did not take the piece of gold and silver bone away. Instead, he seemed to be waiting for someone. Zen watched curiously. After a few moments, there was a stir on the other end of the glade. A huge creature had appeared. The new arrival was enormous, at least 20 feet tall, resembling a human in appearance but with 3 horns on his head. His body flashed with a bold bronze color. Everyone felt the ground trembling as the giant strode heavily towards the stone platform. He clearly had formidable physical strength. When the 3-horned giant reached the stone platform, he bent down and stretched out his hand to grab the piece of gold and silver bone. The giant stuffed the bone in his mouth, barely chewing before swallowing in large gulps. Gold and silver bone was a precious rarity in the divine river. Its hardness was its most valuable characteristic. Replacing one's skeleton with gold and silver bone led to a great enhancement of their physical strength. But now, this gigantic monster was devouring the bone as though it was no more than a snack. The cracking of the bone could be heard throughout the forest. However, as the monster chewed and swallowed, another sound echoed in the forest. It seemed to be the clash of colliding metal. The winner's face turned pale as he witnessed this scene. But of course, he didn't dare to show any displeasure in front of the giant, so the winner gave a forced, strained smile. Have too many gold and silver monsters in the Jade Pure realm been slaughtered? This gold and silver bone has no chewiness at all, and it tastes really terrible, the three-horned monster complained. He walked with booming steps towards the winner, lifting his arm while announcing, "Congratulations. You're the winner of the duel, so you're qualified to obtain the reward." The giant then stuffed the remaining one-third of the gold and silver bone into the winner's hand. The winner gingerly held the mangled bone and almost grimaced before changing his expression into a smile. Finally, he turned and walked quietly away, teeth gritted with suppressed indignation. "Any more battle for today?" said the three-horned monster, turning to the other creatures in the forest. Silence fell over the forest clearing. Within the flaming maple forest, this three-horned giant had absolute authority. The powerful other shore creatures, even the element spirit civilization and the nihility race were deferential to the three-horned monsters in this forest. The giants were all powerful in this domain. They played the role of arbiters in every issue, and extorted every creature in the forest at whim. If the winner had dared to show any obvious discontent at the meager reward, he would have been killed ruthlessly. "Good. If you don't have any more conflict today, don't bother me anymore, or I'll teach you all a good lesson," shouted the three-horned monster, shaking a bronze fist. With that threat, the giant began lumbering away, back to the other end of the forest glade. As soon as the three-horned giant was gone, the atmosphere in the forest clearing changed. Everyone started moving, becoming more loud and active. The water splashed over the banks as someone jumped into the divine river. Others followed suit, jumping with noisy splashes into the river. Many creatures swam and waded in the divine river, tirelessly dragging the soil for treasures. Others stayed in the clearing, exchanging the treasures they had obtained from the divine river with great caution. Zen stood still and observed everyone, then asked in a low voice, "What was that gigantic three-horned monster?" "That was a member of the Misty River race," said Fuxi. A frown of disgust appeared on his face as he spoke. "That race has very, very few members. There are roughly over 20 of them in existence. But their massive bodies and formidable physical strength make it almost impossible to defeat them here." In general, physical strength was unimportant in the three purities stage. If the creatures here were free to use their thurgies, few would be afraid of the Misty River race. However, with the protection of the flaming maple forest, no one could do anything to harm the three-horned giants. Over the years, the members of the Misty River race had decided to live on both sides of the divine river. They constantly took advantage of the situations to further strengthen themselves. Their bodies became stronger and stronger, and now they had complete control over this area. "Have they never left the flaming maple forest?" "Not even once," Zen asked with interest. Fuxi chuckled and said, "Actually, there was one such case. It was the last patriarch of the Misty River race. He had benefited greatly from the divine river, and his physical body had reached its peak, which made him believe that he was invincible in the world." Fuxi paused as though remembering the hubris of the giant, shaking his head. But the monster lasted perhaps 5 minutes after he stepped out of the flaming maple forest. Within minutes of leaving the forest, his body and soul were completely eliminated. Many races hated the Misty River race to the core because of their outrageous habit of cheating and robbing those who passed through the forest. For instance, the element spirit civilization and the nihility race had always wanted to get rid of the Misty River race, but they could do nothing to them in the flaming maple forest. So when word spread that the patriarch of the Misty River race was planning to leave the forest, it became a rare opportunity for everyone to vent their anger. They all waited eagerly for the giant to leave the boundaries of the forest, then they attacked him immediately. Afterwards, it turned out that more than arrogance had driven the patriarch of the Misty River race to depart from the flaming maple forest. Someone had coaxed him to leave. Since then, no one from the Misty River race had ever again left the flaming maple forest. In retaliation, they squeezed the members of other races even more excessively. Suddenly, Zen and everyone else heard the booming of heavy footsteps. They stopped their conversation and turned towards the sound. "Who are you?" A new member of the Misty River race appeared behind them. This giant was slightly smaller in size than the one that had just left, but he had a much more malicious aura. "What a pleasure to see you. Master Larkin, have you forgotten me already?" King Yayan said politely, stepping forward to greet the monster. The members of the ear mouse race were very talented at befriending and conducting business with other races. Indeed, in the past they had acted as emissaries to help the Misty River race bargain with other forces, so this giant, whose name was Larkin, had a good impression of King Yayan. "I know you," said Larkin to the ear mouse, his tone softening slightly. "What are you doing here?" "I was just about to take my friends to the Divine River when Master Brigham came to arbitrate a dispute over a piece of gold and silver bone. It was improper for us to interfere, so we've waited here till now," King Yayan explained patiently. "Humph, go ahead then. Remember to teach these newcomers the rules of this area," Larkin said, waving his hand. Fuxi and the Snake Goddess were of course not newcomers, but they disliked staying near the Divine River. Because they avoided that area, the members of the Misty River race were unfamiliar with the two of them. After King Yayan took the three humans to the forest clearing, their group immediately attracted the attention of many other shore creatures. There weren't many humans near the Divine River. Moreover, the conflict within the human race that had occurred recently had been hot news among many other races, so it came as no surprise that their appearance attracted many eyes. Still, although other creatures were curious, they were not seriously interested in the affairs of humans. Most of the other shore creatures only watched the group of humans for a minute or so before getting distracted by their own concerns. Since the Misty River race rules over this area, how did the Element Spirit civilization come to exert their influence on this area? Zen asked in a low voice. Through benefits exchange. The Element Spirit civilization provides some unique benefits to the Misty River race, replied King Yayan. What does that mean? Are the members of the Misty River race acting as hired fighters for the Element Spirit civilization? Zen asked, looking concerned. King Yayan chuckled and said, "How can you think that the members of the Misty River race would be so easy to manipulate? Not to mention, the Element Spirit civilization were involved in the killing of the last patriarch of the Misty River race. If indeed they asked the Misty River race to do something for them, they would ask a huge price in return, and still there would be no guarantee that the Misty River race would keep its word." As King Yayan spoke, the surface of the Divine River began to ripple. Waves were forming on the water. Water splashed as the waves rose and fell on the river. There were fish swimming with the waves. Each fish was fist-sized, cutting quickly through the churning waters. "It's the golden bites. Go ashore now. Leave the water or else you will become fish feed." The air was filled with shouts as the creatures on the ground shouted warnings at the creatures submerged in the river. Those who were still in the Divine River wore expressions of panic as they tried to reach the shore. This section of Divine River was within the range of the flaming maple forest. They didn't dare use their thurgies, so they had no choice but to swim desperately towards the shores of the river, hoping to get to solid ground before the fish reached them. There were thuds and splashes as the first creatures reached the shore. The creatures tumbled out one after another in their haste to escape from the water. Unfortunately, not all the creatures in the Divine River reached the shores in time. A few remained trapped in the water when the golden bites swarmed around them. The golden bites, a shoal of fist-sized fish with shimmering golden scales, completely surrounded the creatures in the river. Within seconds, their prey sank deep into the water and disappeared without a trace, leaving only the flashing golden scales visible in the depths of the water. Chapter 3533, Outflank. Within the blink of an eye, the golden fish swam across the Divine River with such finesse that they disappeared without a trace. But the blood from the bottom remained on the surface of the river for a fair amount of time. For the races on the shores, it seemed to be an experience they'd gotten used to over time. The creatures that had just crawled out of the water dived right back in without any visible reluctance. Did they not fear the golden bites? Zen asked with apparent confusion reflecting from his face as he looked at the creatures in the Divine River. The creatures residing in the flaming maple forest were quite compelling, but the golden bites could easily tear them apart limb from limb. Their sheer brute strength was enough to send chills down their spines. As soon as the golden bites were out of sight, they crawled back into the Divine River. They were fearless. Squeak. The golden bites won't come back. They eat anything, but they will only go all the way to the lower reaches from the upper reaches in flocks. After a flock of golden bites leave, the Divine River will become much safer, King Yayan explained while maintaining a steady eye contact with Zen. The creatures on the shores weren't the only ones whose existence was threatened by the golden bites. The fierce beasts in the Divine River too were powerless against them, and would end up getting devoured. Therefore, every time they passed through the Divine River, it would be free of the usual threats. Many creatures would take this opportunity to find some treasures in the divine river. Why don't we take this opportunity to save Eastern Emperor Tai and Madame Yasmin? Zen said with determination oozing from his tone. The reason why he came to the Flaming Maple Forest was to rescue Eastern Emperor Tai and Yasmin. Since the two of them were trapped in the divine river, and it was safe to enter it at this time, it was a favorable situation for him. After scanning its surroundings by running its gaze all around, King Yayan squeaked, "Don't be hasty. Let me go and check it out first." Upon saying that, it quietly walked up to the divine river and dived into it. The speed at which it swam was insanely fast. It was hard to keep track of its movements. Within a flash, it reached the other end of the river. It was quickly out of sight after going down a distance along the other side. Stationed at the lower reaches of the divine river were more than 10 creatures to guard that place. They were given strict orders to arrest Eastern Emperor Tai and Yasmin on sight. At least, that was what the outsiders heard. At that time, the Sun Crow race bore ill intentions against the Oneness Sky Palace. Their biggest priority was to annihilate both Eastern Emperor Tai and Yasmin and erase their existence from the world. Killing 2 Eternal Realm warriors on the other shore was far less arduous compared to doing it in the chaos. To follow through with their plans, the Yellow Thirk requested the assistance of the Element Spirit Civilization. He had asked Mahoney to lure Yasmin to the Divine River to finish her off. However, it never occurred to them that Yasmin would escape from their clutches and head to the bottom of the Divine River. Although Yasmin and Eastern Emperor Tai had successfully foiled the attempt to assassinate them, they were unable to return to the Oneness Sky Palace because they were soaked in the soul-interdicting water. Even though they hadn't taken them down for good, the Yellow Thirk and the Divine Farmer had achieved their purpose in keeping them away from the Oneness Sky Palace. Taking advantage of the situation, the Sun Crow race went ahead and launched a full-blown attack on the Oneness Sky Palace. Due to the surprise attack and their lowered defenses, the Oneness Sky Palace faced difficulty in defending themselves against the Sun Crow race. Since they were caught off guard, there was no time for Pear Hill to act fast and reinforce them. Unexpectedly, Zen appeared and released the real Eastern Emperor Tai to turn the situation in their favor. As a result, the Sun Crow race experienced a massive setback, and Eastern Emperor Tai and Yasmin were no longer of any value. The Element Spirit Civilization didn't even take Fuxi and the Snake Goddess seriously, let alone Eastern Emperor Tai and Yasmin, who were only at the Eternal Realm. That was why only 3 people were tasked to guard the place, and the others were transferred to other places one after another. Then, after their battle raged on with Pear Hill, the Element Spirit Civilization decided to send more people to guard this place as an added precaution. However, this time, they had a switch of intentions. Instead of wanting to capture Eastern Emperor Tai and Yasmin, they were asked to wait for Zen. The Flaming Maple Forest was not the territory of the Element Spirit Civilization, so they could only send a limited number of spies there. Additionally, King Yayan was always sharp on its toes. Its cautious nature kept Zen and his group hidden away, avoiding all sorts of unwanted attention. However, it all went down the drain soon after they passed through the open space of the forest. A hairy creature immediately rushed over to his friends to inform them of his latest discovery. Some humans have arrived. The name of their leader was Norris. Visually, he was a towering figure with an incredible height of 50 feet. His skin was of a thick cyan color, and his appearance overall gave off the impression of a wild ancient beast with low intelligence yet infinite reserves of strength. Humans, are they the Yellow Thirk and the Divine Farmer? Norris furrowed his brows as he asked. Despite his daunting presence and overwhelming size, his tone reflected calmness with a touch of elegance. Norris was a tyrant in the Grand Pure Realm. After facing loss at the hands of the Eye Spirit, he had devoted his life to following his orders obediently. Using his authority over him, the Eye Spirit sent him here to capture Zen. Staying loyal to the Eye Spirit, Norris reassured the success of the task that was given to him. He was going to make sure Zen would not leave the Flaming Maple Forest alive. "I'm familiar with the auras of the Yellow Thirk and the Divine Farmer," the reporter answered. "But the auras of those people are different from theirs. They're quite strange." As those words reached his ears, a gleam of light flashed through the pupils of Norris's eyes. Right now, there were very few humans at the Eternal Realm. Besides the Yellow Thirk and the Divine Farmer, only those from the Pear Hill could be these humans. "It seems the prey has finally shown itself." Norris suddenly stood up and said to the creatures beside him, "You 3 continue to guard this place. The others follow me." After assigning everyone their duties, he dashed towards the open space in the forest with about 8 creatures following closely behind. Unbeknownst to them, a small black head appeared on the surface of the Divine River. It was King Yayan. As soon as it arrived, it witnessed the entire scene and caught wind of their malicious intentions. Shocked by the sudden discovery, it dived into the river once again and swam its way back to the upper reaches. Previously, it swam downstream at an incredible pace to scope the area out for Zen. But now, as it swam upstream, its speed had decreased drastically. It was visibly slower than Norris and his men. However, the divine river was in the shape of a funnel, and Norris and his men were far away in terms of distance. Seeing that Norris was swiftly closing the distance between himself and the open space in the forest, King Yayan emerged from the river and shouted, "Snake Goddess, Fuxi, Zen, quickly retreat from this place. They are coming." When King Yayan's warning reached their ears, all three of them displayed expression of depression. As they walked with quick steps and with their gazes fixated on the ground, three huge creatures suddenly appeared in front of them and blocked their path. They belonged to the Misty River race, and the leader was Larkin. As Larkin eyed them up with disgust, a malicious smirk appeared on his face. "I forgot something. The guy from the Element Spirit race has told me that I would be rewarded handsomely if I were to catch you." Most of the good things in the Three Purities stage had fallen into the hands of the Element Spirit civilization, and they always fulfilled every promise they made. Although the Misty River race and the Element Spirit civilization didn't usually get along, they could still work together if it involved their mutual interest. "Retreat from the other shore. Hurry up," King Yayan shouted loudly again to remind them of the approaching calamity. However, the Snake Goddess, Fuxi, and Zen remained rooted in their respective spots as they were forced into a dead end. The three didn't have any time to process their next move. In a moment of desperation, they chanted the illusion-breaking rune, and their bodies blurred as they withdrew from the other shore. The illusion-breaking rune was also a kind of energy. When the flaming maple forest felt this energy, it immediately reacted to it in response. Countless maple leaves flashed and flew over, but the three of them had disappeared on the other shore before the maple leaves could explode, so they remained unharmed. Seeing the prey escape from the other shore right under his nose, Larkin became furious. "Catch that mouse." Even after the three escaped, Norris remained calm and showed no signs of frustration. He secretly made a gesture to the creatures under his command, and behind him, three of them jumped into the divine river to capture King Yayan. Norris calmly walked over to the place where Zen, the Snake Goddess and Fuxi had disappeared. He wore a pensive expression on his face as he examined his surroundings. There was a way to forcefully drag the creatures on the other shore back to the source world. In the past, Flamin had planned to drag Elvinia back, but she was unsuccessful in her attempt. Norris, on the other hand, had a way to forcefully drag the creatures from the chaos back to the other shore. Chapter 3534, Dragged in Forcibly. On the dark haze peak, Zen, the Snake Goddess, and Fuxi opened their eyes almost at the same time. No one spoke at first, the silence cutting through the air. They knew that they could truly escape from the crisis only if they found a secret place to retreat from the other shore. If they left the other shore under the watchful eyes of the public, they would probably never be able to return. The Element Spirit civilization would most likely stay in the flaming maple forest until the end of the world. But just now, they had no choice but to retreat. "King Yayan is in the divine river and can't leave the other shore," the Snake Goddess whispered. "Go and have a look." Fuxi stood up. Whoosh, whoosh. The Snake Goddess and Fuxi turned into beams of light and flew away, Zen following them without hesitation. This time, they went to the flaming maple forest under King Yayan's guidance. They hadn't expected such a huge mess would be caused. On a different peak, Dempsey of the Ear Mouse race and several other ear mice stood guard. King Yayan maintained its original posture, looking normal. Dempsey cupped its hands towards Fuxi and said, "Human sovereign, King Yayan is now cultivating on the other shore. Please." "I know," said Fuxi, shaking his head. "We were together moments ago, but now, King Yayan can't leave the other shore." Dempsey and the other ear mice were shocked at these words. They had heard of how dangerous the Three Purities stage was. Now that Fuxi and the Snake Goddess were forced to leave the other shore, King Yayan might be in danger. What happened to King Yayan? Is something big happening in the Grand Pure Realm? Why can't our king escape from the other shore? The ear mice were worried as they shot question after question. The Snake Goddess looked at King Yayan and said, "It's not a big deal. King Yayan might not be caught." Splash, splash. As it saw several members of alien races jumping into the divine river, King Yayan quickly turned around and swam towards the river's side. It couldn't leave the other shore at the moment, and there was no way for it to survive even if it swam to either side of the divine river. It had thought of the same method as Eastern Emperor Thais to hide in the undercurrents of the divine river. It had no time to think about what would need to be done in the future. King Yayan had swum about 100 feet when panic and despair filled its eyes. About 10 people were gathering in the direction, preparing to besiege it. The element spirit civilization hadn't left so many people in the flaming maple forest. It was obvious that Norris had bribed these people into arresting it. These warriors from alien races who had been staying in the flaming maple forest all year round would do what they were paid to do as long as they got a rich reward. Besides, arresting King Yayan was a piece of cake for them. King Yayan was then carried into the open space in the forest. After keenly observing the place where Zen, the snake goddess, and Fuxi had disappeared for a while, Norris turned around and walked towards King Yayan, stretching out a strong finger and pressing it to King Yayan's head. His finger was even bigger than King Yayan's head. "Did they care about your life?" Norris asked. "No," replied King Yayan, gritting its teeth. "You can die now then," Norris said, making to press his finger even more heavily into Yayan's head. "Yes, they do," King Yayan backtracked. After all, it was still afraid of death. "Can you deliver my message to them?" Norris asked. King Yayan's eyes lit up, and it thought that Norris would let it leave the other shore. "When the soul interdicting water doesn't work, I can leave and relay your words to them." "I didn't mean that," Norris said, shaking his head. "Are they with you? Can they see you?" King Yayan didn't know what Norris wanted to do. It hesitated for a moment and said, "I think they can." "Very good." A smile appeared on Norris's face. He raised his thick finger, a sharp nail at its end, and began to write some words on King Yayan's body, cutting into it as he wrote. Blood began to ooze out of these cuts, leaving deep, dark stains on King Yayan's fur. At the same time, these blood stains also appeared on King Yayan's body in the Pear Hill. The blood stains continued to expand into a bloody sentence. "Can you see the words?" Zen, the snake goddess, Fuxi, Dempsey and the others saw these words, their faces darkening with each word. King Yayan had already fallen into their hands. "Come back to the other shore and follow me to meet Master Ice Spirit. He can give you what you want." These words extended all the way from King Yayan's head to its chest and then to its back. King Yayan was relatively small. Norris's finger, on the other hand, was thick and large. The bloody words quickly covered King Yayan's entire body. When there was no space left on King Yayan's body for Norris to write, he threw King Yayan aside like garbage. He turned around, looked at the place where Zen, Fuxi and the snake goddess had disappeared, and waited. The ice spirit hoped that Norris could catch Zen. If he couldn't, then he could choose to kill him. So the first step that Norris had to take was to persuade Zen. Zen wasn't planning to return to the other shore anytime soon. Norris's eyes narrowed as he drew a bloodline on his arm and with a tug, he forcefully removed his left arm from his shoulder. And though his arm was now separated from his body, it still was under his control. The warriors of the alien races that had followed and supported Norris knew what he wanted to do, and retreated hastily. The 3 members of the Misty River race watched the scene unfold, their expressions cold but guarded. Buzz! The palm of his broken left arm flashed, as a ray of orange light began to gather on its surface. Norris then controlled his left arm to grab something in the void. In the Pear Hill, Fuxi suddenly felt dizzy and soon found himself back on the other shore. Before Fuxi could react, Norris pulled him to his side. Splash! The non-human creatures beside him had already prepared the soul-interdicting water and immediately poured it on Fuxi. Some maple leaves began to float towards the broken left arm and one by one, attached themselves to it. Boom, 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 and then, the maple leaves exploded, turning Norris's left arm into dust. "Have I caught the wrong person? It doesn't matter, I will catch you all," Norris said, with a demented smile on his face. His shoulder shook slightly as a new arm grew out of the stump. Norris liked to strengthen his own body, but he had no choice in the flaming maple forest but to use his left arm to grab Zen. This new left arm was much weaker than the previous one. In the Pear Hill, Zen and the snake goddess were confused, not having known what had happened. Fuxi had lost consciousness and fallen to the ground. It was not until the same handwriting as that on King Yayan's body appeared on Fuxi's chest that they realized that Fuxi had been pulled back to the other shore. "You can't escape. You're next." Both the snake goddess and Zen panicked at these words. They had never heard of anyone who had such abilities. But Fuxi's plight had them believing that someone could catch people in the chaos and pull them back to the other shore. The snake goddess didn't panic for long. Like Fuxi, she closed her eyes and was also taken back to the other shore. Chapter 3535, The Consequence. The snake goddess also got caught in the open space of the flaming maple forest, where Norris stood and looked at her with a frown. Generally speaking, there were certain conditions to be met for him to capture the creatures from the chaos and drag them back to the other shore. It wouldn't work if these creatures withdrew from the other shore more than 3 days ago. Because in that case, Norris couldn't see the shadow they left behind on the other shore. Besides, he could only randomly grab someone from those who left the other shore in groups. Now, he aimed to get Zen, but he caught the wrong person twice. Sizzle. At that moment, a new arm began to grow from the wound on his left shoulder. The arm that broke before grew quite fast, but after he lost it twice in a row, the regeneration speed for the third arm became slower. But although Norris felt a little miserable, he wasn't anxious. Zen was the last one, so he would catch him and take him back to the other shore next time. He still had enough time to complete the task. On the other hand, the snake goddess, Fuxi, and the ear mouse had gotten imprisoned. They exchanged worried looks while in silence. They survived the war against the element spirit civilization and the nihility race, only to get trapped in the flaming maple forest. If Norris caught Zen and took him to the other shore, he would be like a fish on the chopping block. Speaking of Zen, he was now in the chaos with an unusually serious expression. Master Zen, what should we do now? Were the human sovereign and the snake goddess really dragged back to the other shore? Zen, I'm afraid you'll be the next one to be pulled to the other shore. You'd better find a way to escape as soon as possible. Squeak. Dempsey and some ear mice, who were with him, couldn't help but feel anxious. Zen just rolled his eyes and felt a little helpless. If only he could run, he would have run away. Although he didn't know what method the opponent had used to pull Fuxi and the snake goddess in, the enemy had probably taken advantage of the place where they withdrew from the other shore. After all, he couldn't change his position if he couldn't enter the other shore. Therefore, it was most likely his turn to be dragged into the other shore. What to do now? The primeval Lord of Heaven was also silent, but he too tried to think of a way to break the situation. However, no matter how much he thought, it was useless since the Thurgy wasn't allowed within the flaming maple forest. If you can't use the Thurgy, you can only fight with your physical body. Then, you need more strength and a stronger physical body. Puff. At that point, streams of blood gushed out from the snake goddess's back, and crimson words appeared from top to bottom on her snow-white skin. You're lucky. You'll be the last one. Are you ready? The ear mice and Zen stared at the words sullenly. It was as if the words mocked them. A stronger physical body and more strength. Then, Zen raised his hands and looked around. The ancestry-level bloodline could change his physical form and also give him immensely strong power. However, it was very stingy. It would only strengthen his body when he was on the verge of death. Just as he was about to persuade the ancestry-level bloodline, he suddenly felt his body become burning hot. The ancestry-level bloodline fluctuated, and then his body began to change drastically. Finally, his body instantly grew up to 50 feet high. The muscles on his chest became like small dragons, and his bones changed even more. Each of his arms had 1 tibia before, but now 6 extra tibiae grew. The extra tibiae formed a more complex but very solid bone system. As his physical body changed, his aura also changed a lot. Several Holy Soul Realm ear mice, including Dempsey, all looked at him in fear. Even though they knew it was Zen, and he could change, they still couldn't help but feel afraid. Of course, his excessive strength and powerful physical body also changed his state of mind. At this moment, he felt a strong urge to fight. His panic was gone without a trace, replaced with a sense of expectation. He even waited eagerly for the opponent to pull him to the other shore. Meanwhile, multiple non-human creatures waited in the open space of the forest. Norris's left arm was still growing slowly. As the new and tender flesh slowly emerged, the snake goddess, Fuxi, and King Yayan became increasingly desperate. Not long after, his left arm had fully grown. Then, he created another bloodstain on his left arm and removed it. Buzz. Light glowed on the palm of the broken arm and he stretched it towards the void. The moment the broken arm touched the void, it caught something. I have caught him. The corners of his mouth curled up into a smirk. This time, he wouldn't make a mistake again. With a fierce tug, he dragged Zen to the other shore. He, Fuxi, the snake goddess, and the members of the Misty River race who were watching on the side, all expected that an ordinary Eternal Realm human warrior would come out from the other side. However, what appeared was not a human, but a massive creature that was 50 feet tall. Upon seeing the creature, Fuxi instinctively thought that Zen had activated the wild god body, but the flaming maple forest attacked anyone who used the wild god power and made any move related to energy. Yet, he saw that Zen had changed his appearance entirely. He realized that Zen's bloodline must have worked. The snake goddess and King Yayan's eyes both lit up with hope. They knew how powerful the bloodline in Zen's body was. I've heard that you waited for me, right? Zen said as he looked down at Norris in front of him. You are. At first, Norris was complacent and believed that he would surely catch Zen this time. But now, his voice became slightly shaky as he faced the immensely tall Zen. The non-human creatures behind him looked even more terrified. One of them, who held a basin of soul-interdicting water, dare not pour it on Zen. Even Larkin of the Misty River race stared at Zen in trepidation, his bronze-colored face wrinkling by his frown. After the element spirit civilization had paid a heavy price, the members of the Misty River race allowed them to act rashly in this place. However, this human being, Norris had pulled into the other shore secretly threatened Larkin. He had not felt like that in a long time, so he was extremely upset about it. I am Zen, Zen replied. How did you become like this? Norris asked in disbelief. You just need to know the consequence of provoking me, Zen said with a smile. What consequence? Crack. Before he could say anything else, Zen grabbed his shoulder with one hand and gripped his face with the other. Whoosh. Zen's strong legs suddenly kicked on the ground and dug 2 big holes. Crack. At the next moment, everyone saw that he had pushed Norris against the biggest flaming maple tree. His force also hit the tree, which caused many leaves to fall. However, the maple leaves didn't shine or explode. Boom, 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 boom. Next, they all saw that Zen's hands had turned into countless fist shadows. Clouds of blood mist burst out as each fist shadow exploded upon Norris's body. About 30 seconds later, Norris's powerful body had turned into thin shreds that clung onto the flaming maple tree. None of his body parts were still intact. Zen turned around and said, the consequence is death. Of course, he didn't say those words to Norris, who was already dead. Chapter 3536, Writing. Norris was known as one of the most powerful cultivators in the Grand Pure Realm. Only a few could match his overwhelming physical strength. Even the weaker members of the Misty River race were no match for him. That was why everyone who was watching didn't expect he would die in such a pathetic way. He died on the flaming maple tree before he could even make a move. The creatures that followed Norris were left dumbfounded. Their eyes and mouths were wide open as they looked at the bloody scene on the flaming maple tree. They trembled in fear as they realized that the warrior that they looked up to easily died in such a miserable way. As the creatures turned to look at Zen, their anger dissipated and was replaced by extreme horror. They couldn't help thinking if this guy was just really a human. After killing Norris, Zen looked at King Yayan, Fuxi, and the snake goddess, who were still being detained. The 3 creatures that were guarding them were still in shock. However, as they discovered that Zen was looking at their direction, they quickly regained their senses and felt like an electric shock was running beneath their skin. Fearing greatly for their lives, they jumped into the divine river behind them without thinking twice. Splash, splash, splash. As their bodies fell into the water, they wasted no time and quickly fled downstream. At that moment, there were still other creatures in the open space of the forest. Most of them were neutral, while a few of them were closely related to the Nihility race. However, right now, it was a conflict between Zen and the element spirit civilization, and these creatures were having fun watching the commotion. Now this is interesting. I wonder if this guy's surprising strength is enough to challenge the members of the Misty River race. Humph, that's nothing. He may be able to deal with the ordinary members of the Misty River race, but if that man reveals himself, this human will be ravaged into pieces. Don't even dream about it. The creatures chatted and whispered among themselves. For a long time now, these creatures had lived beside the Divine River and were oppressed by the members of the Misty River race. They endured so many years, but they were just too weak to fight back. One could just imagine the grievance and agony in their hearts. With the sudden appearance of Zen, some creatures thought that he might be the glimmer of hope that they had been waiting. But when someone mentioned that man, the remaining light of hope in their eyes quickly dissipated. That member of the Misty River race was exceptionally powerful. No one ever defeated him, at least in the Grand Pure Realm. Meanwhile, the center of the snake goddess's palm flashed a faint green light. Wherever the light passed, the wounds on the surface of her body instantly healed. Fuxi also started healing his wounds, and in no time, their bodies had already recovered. After that, Zen approached them and said, I think those guys wouldn't dare to stop us anymore. It's our chance to swim downstream. There were actually still a few creatures left. However, they were much weaker than Zen. With Zen's current strength, he could just easily kill them all if they tried to hinder them. When they were about to set out, 3 members of the Misty River race, who were watching earlier, stood in front of them. Larkin, the leader of their group, deliberately blocked Zen's way. Even if Zen brought down a powerful warrior like Norris, they remained unfazed. For them, the place was the territory of their race, and all creatures had to obey them. "You're blocking the way," Zen said coldly as he stared down at Larkin. "Do you think you can just leave like that? You killed someone in our territory," Larkin answered in a condescending tone. "That someone didn't belong to your race," Zen said with a smirk. "And this is not your territory." When the other creatures in the open space of the forest heard this, a faint smile appeared on their faces as they repeatedly nodded. The flaming maple forest itself was a shelter in the Three Purities stage. Then, the Misty River race occupied the place and started threatening the creatures there. However, they couldn't fight back as the Misty River race was much more powerful than them here. But still, most of the creatures feared the authority of the Misty River race, so they didn't dare utter a word of support towards Zen. Obviously, Zen's words offended the Misty River race. The faces of the three members immediately darkened, and a strong killing intent oozed from Larkin's eyes. If Zen was just an ordinary other shore creature, Larkin would have already grabbed his head and smashed it to the ground. However, Larkin clearly witnessed Zen's strength when he killed Norris effortlessly. He did not dare to be rash and only managed to answer with a sinister smile, "Don't push your luck, human. You'll definitely regret it." Zen just laughed away his threat. "Stop yapping, and just do it, if you can." Zen took a quick step forward and knocked off Larkin's sturdy and heavy body with ease. He stared down at Larkin for a few seconds before he left with the snake goddess, Fuxi, and King Yayan. Fuxi had a smirk on his face while shaking his head as they left the area. The snake goddess and Fuxi seldom appeared in the flaming maple forest. On the other hand, King Yayan had been staying in the forest for quite a long time. In order to build a good relationship with the creatures on the other shore, it had no choice but to endure several hardships. But now that it was with Zen and the two Eternal Realm Masters, it had a beaming self-confidence. When they approached the lower reaches of the Divine River, they saw that the currents became more turbulent. From time to time, there would be huge whirlpools rapidly appearing and disappearing. As they arrived at the river, they noticed that the creatures that should be standing guard had already fled. Eastern Emperor Tai and Madame Yasmin are at the bottom of the river, King Yayan informed. "This area is very dangerous. The undercurrents are complex and several unknown monsters reside there." Eastern Emperor Tai and Yasmin were trapped and forced into the undercurrents. However, the two of them seemed to have known the rules applied there. They had stayed there for so long but didn't encounter any sort of danger. If the undercurrents are too complex, then it would not be easy to find them. "Is there a possibility that they could come out by themselves?" the snake goddess asked. "It should actually be possible. Not long ago, Eastern Emperor Tai surfaced and tried to escape. However, his attempt failed because several creatures were guarding the shore," King Yayan said. "Now that the creatures that were supposed to be guarding have already fled, they should be able to come out on their own. The only problem is how we could inform them." The eyes of Fuxi, the snake goddess, and Zen immediately lit up at its words. "Well, the two of them will have to suffer a little bit," the snake goddess said with a faint smile. After the soul interdicting water on their bodies lost its effect, they quickly left the other shore and rushed to the residences of Eastern Emperor Tai and Yasmin. They saw that their bodies were still in good condition and their breath had not weakened. This meant that they were not hurt on the other shore. After releasing their bodies from the red crystals, the snake goddess stretched out two of her fingers, and her shadow turned into a thin energy needle. Then she wrote something carefully on the arms of Eastern Emperor Tai and Yasmin. There were caves of various sizes at the bottom of the Divine River. As the caves were connected with each other, complex undercurrents were formed. Inside one of the undercurrents, there was a long and narrow cave that only a single person could pass through. In the innermost layer of this cave, Eastern Emperor Tai and Yasmin sat there with legs crossed, soaked in the soul interdicting water. Eastern Emperor Tai, who had been meditating with his eyes closed, suddenly felt a piercing pain in his arm. He immediately opened his eyes and saw that some words were being written on it. Seeing this, he thought of the person who could be writing them. "Flamen," he muttered. Chapter 3537, Giant Turbid Crocodiles. Thin bloodlines formed clear words on Eastern Emperor Tai's arm. "Zen has driven away all the guards above. You are safe now," the words stated. The Emperor's eyes widened in disbelief when he saw the words on his arm. Had Zen entered stage 33? It was truly unbelievable. He had met Zen twice in the Oneness Sky Palace, and he thought that the young warrior was exceptional back then. Moreover, Zen led the human race to occupy stage 14 after he entered the Desire World. Eastern Emperor Tai had high expectations for Zen, and he even believed that Zen might reach the Eternal Realm. However, the news he received was a little too much. He didn't expect that Zen had entered the Grand Pure Realm after just a short time. He cast his thoughts aside and stretched out his hand, then pushed Yasmin, who was nearby. When Yasmin opened her eyes and saw the words, she too was surprised. It felt uncomfortable to be soaked in the soul-interdicting water for such a long time, and the undercurrents were quite dangerous. Back then, when the enemies and 3 sturgeons hunted her down, she had no choice but to enter the undercurrents. If Eastern Emperor Tai hadn't found the passage at the bottom of the undercurrents, she would have died a long time ago. The two of them waited at the bottom of the undercurrents for quite some time. Sometimes, Eastern Emperor Tai quietly went out and investigated the situation, but the enemies were extremely patient and did not give them a chance to escape. The last time he went to the river's surface to check, he almost could not come back because the beasts from the undercurrents attacked him. Now, the two of them felt somewhat uneasy these days. How did the Oneness Sky Palace fare since its only 2 members at the Eternal Realm got trapped? It was very likely that before their opponents killed them on the other shore, they had died in the Source World. They didn't know that both the Oneness Sky Palace and the Pear Hill underwent tremendous changes. Just then, Yasmin fished out a thin needle from her gray hair. Then, she rushed towards Eastern Emperor Tai to respond to the words on his arm. In turn, Eastern Emperor Tai glared at her, but he realized that the people in the Source World were watching him. Thus, he had no choice but to let her write on his arm. Got it, we'll go up now. Meanwhile, in the Pear Hill, the Snake Goddess, Fuxi, and Zen perked up when they saw those words. After all, they could finally have a break if Eastern Emperor Tai and Yasmin could save themselves in that way. Of course, the people of the Oneness Sky Palace were more ecstatic. They had been living in Pear Hill since they arrived in the place. Even if they couldn't return to the Bloom Divine Province soon, the return of Eastern Emperor Tai and Yasmin still gave them a sense of belonging. Flamen even had tears in her eyes. Let's go back to the other shore, said Zen. Okay, but we need to be careful, Fuxi said with a nod. Zen, Fuxi, the Snake Goddess, and King Yayan entered the other shore again and waited by the Divine River. After Eastern Emperor Tai and Yasmin came out of the narrow passage, they followed the undercurrents to the left. Although the undercurrents here were complicated, Eastern Emperor Tai knew them very well. There were 2 exits out of the undercurrents. If they missed any of them, then they would get lost. Plop, plop, fortunately, they found their way out. However, strong currents came at them after they left the 2 exits. The currents were so strong that the weaker creatures from the other shore couldn't even stand in them. But since Yasmin and Eastern Emperor Tai were Eternal Realm cultivators, they weren't worried. They slowly moved sideways through the currents. They would reach the river's surface once they crossed the currents, so both of them couldn't help but speed up. What they didn't know was that Eastern Emperor Tai's arm was bleeding. He had always been a very cautious man. If it had been another time, he would surely heal the wounds first, but now that he knew that they had a chance to escape, he forgot all about it. There was very little blood that gushed out from the wounds, but some monsters in the undercurrents were highly sensitive. In the cave below the undercurrents, a large and flat mouth suddenly opened up, then a dark green tongue stuck out from the many rows of sharp teeth. Even though the blood got diluted in the soul-interdicting water and his body was invisible, the dark green beast still targeted him. Splash! Water whirled like a hurricane, then monsters with spikes emerged out of the cave one after another. They formed a neat line and swam along with the strong undercurrents. At that point, Eastern Emperor Tai and Yasmin already came out of the undercurrents and floated upward. In a few seconds, Eastern Emperor Tai had gotten close to the surface of the river. Suddenly, he stopped Yasmin and cautiously looked around. They knew nothing about the outside world. What if the person who wrote on his arm was not from the Oneness Sky Palace? However, Yasmin didn't think much about it. If their bodies did fall into the hands of the enemy, then the enemy did not have to try hard to lure them out. They could just kill them there. On the other hand, Eastern Emperor Tai slowly surfaced and looked vigilantly at the shore. His trepidation was replaced with joy when he saw Fuxi, the Snake Goddess, and King Yayan. But, he was confused when he saw a large, 50-foot-tall creature beside Fuxi. Who was that? Wasn't Zen waiting for him? Where was Zen? Eastern Emperor Tai, you can come up now, King Yayan said with a smile. Fuxi also waved at Eastern Emperor Tai while the Snake Goddess asked, where is Madame Yasmin? I'll ask her to come up as well, Eastern Emperor Tai answered. Then, He looked down into the river as he spoke. His face suddenly changed, and he plunged into the water. While Yasmin waited for him to confirm the situation on the shore, she suddenly saw him rush towards her. When she looked down, she found a long string of gray, obscure objects. Upon a closer look, she saw more than 10 monsters that stayed connected at the ends. Giant turbid crocodiles. The giant turbid crocodiles rarely appeared alone. Every time they appeared, there would be at least a few or even dozens of them. Moreover, they swam close to each other end to end. That was why, from a distance, they looked like a big snake under the water. They were considered powerful predators in undercurrents. Their prey couldn't escape their clutches, and they tore them to pieces and swallowed them up in only a few seconds. As soon as Yasmin snapped back to her senses, she quickly swam upward, but the giant turbid crocodiles moved very fast. It wasn't long before the giant turbid crocodile in the front bit her. Eastern Emperor Tai, who had just returned for her, grabbed hold of her body and dragged her up the divine river. It was a good thing that he could withstand the power of a giant turbid crocodile, so he could bring Yasmin up to the surface. Unfortunately, all the other giant turbid crocodiles bit on the tail of the giant turbid crocodile in the front and dragged it down. As a result, Yasmin and Eastern Emperor Tai sank as well. The people on the shore didn't know what had happened. Eastern Emperor Tai and Yasmin did not show up after a long time, but bubbles surged violently from where Eastern Emperor Tai dived in. The snake goddess began to look worried and said, "Oh no. Are they in trouble?" Before she could say anything else, Zen took a big step forward and quickly dived into the divine river. Chapter 3538, Rescue. As Zen rushed into the divine river, his huge body went against the currents and stirred up hundreds of waves. Meanwhile, Eastern Emperor Tai struggled to pull Yasmin upwards. Just as the two of them continued to fight their way up, he suddenly heard a loud noise above them. Rumble. The sudden loud noise would have struck fear in anyone's heart, but Eastern Emperor Tai did not feel afraid when he saw it come from the creature that was with Fuxi. This huge creature must have come to help him. Yasmin's leg was bitten and continued to bleed. Those beasts hiding in the depths of the divine river no doubt smelled it and circled the waters. Round, black insects emerged from the muddy soil while a black dragon mastiff appeared in the distance. The dragon mastiff was alone, but its strength far surpassed that of those giant turbid crocodiles that often hunted in groups. On the left side of the river was a cave that suddenly opened to let out 2 palm-sized fish. Though small, these 2 seemingly harmless fish were in fact spirit sharks that ate ordinary fierce beasts for supper. When they appeared, the other beasts took it as a sign to retreat lest they make a mistake and provoke them. Since Eastern Emperor Tai couldn't pull Yasmin up, he merely gestured and pointed at her leg, which was still in the giant turbid crocodile's mouth. Yasmin knew what he meant. If she got dragged down into the depths, it would be her end. With gritted teeth, Yasmin unsheathed a dark cyan saber from her sleeve, a weapon she often used on the other shore. It was a trusty saber that she often used to hack her opponents. She never thought there would come a day when she was forced to use it to hack her leg. With a determined look in her eyes, Yasmin swung her blade and cut off her own leg cleanly. Eastern Emperor Tai was able to pull her up, but those giant turbid crocodiles weren't going to give up so easily. Spurred by her attempt to escape, the giant turbid crocodiles broke out of formation. After swallowing up Yasmin's dismembered leg, they quickly rushed towards the two again. It was at that moment that Zen arrived. Splash! With his big, fan-like hands, he clasped both Eastern Emperor Tai and Yasmin on the shoulder and pulled them up with all his might. The two were able to rise with his help, but the same couldn't be said for Zen, who now sank rapidly underneath the waters. While he sank, Zen stretched his hands out to the giant turbid crocodiles that awaited him. These beasts had survived countless life and death struggles in the divine river. Not only were they powerful, they could also sense danger far away. Zen exuded a terrifying amount of pressure that the giant turbid crocodiles knew to avoid instinctively. The moment he appeared, all of them wanted to turn tail. Unfortunately, the giant turbid crocodiles that were near Zen had already fallen into his hands, literally. The man held the head of a giant turbid crocodile and, with a gentle pinch, smashed it in his hold. He did this 4 more times before the other giant turbid crocodiles panicked and turned tail to go back to their home. Zen had no intention of hunting these creatures, so he simply let them go. When he raised his head, he saw 2 palm-sized fish in the distance. They were like 2 sharp arrows that suddenly darted towards Eastern Emperor Tai. Zen's eyes immediately narrowed. There fast, 2 fist-sized holes appeared on Eastern Emperor Tai's body as the 2 fish pierced through him. By the time he realized it, the 2 fish were already several hundred feet away. Spirit sharks. The soul interdicting water posed great resistance and decreased all creatures' speed. Those two little fish proved to be the exceptions. Eastern Emperor Tai had been hiding in the river for a long time and naturally recognized these dangerous predators. He was no match for them and could only endure the pain as he tried to float to the surface with Yasmin. Blood gurgled on his wounds, but it wasn't anything he deemed too serious. Unfortunately, the spirit sharks were not done. After the initial strike, they turned around and darted back towards Eastern Emperor Tai. Rumble, rumble. This time, even Yasmin was hit. There was no dodging or defending against these spirit sharks and their attacks. All they could do was take it. As the spirit sharks prepared their third attack, Zen's body suddenly shook violently and generated numerous bubbles that covered him entirely. This attracted the spirit shark's attention. When he saw the two fish looking at him, Zen flashed them a gesture that could be interpreted as a clear provocation. Powerful they might be, these spirit sharks weren't very intelligent. They had since been rulers of this place and did not even take members of the Misty River race that seriously. So how in the world would they take Zen's provocation lightly? With their former prey forgotten, the two spirit sharks turned their attention to Zen and immediately darted towards him. Eastern Emperor Tai could only look on in shock. He never expected this huge creature to sacrifice himself just to get the spirit sharks off their backs. For a second, he hesitated and thought about going down to help the creature. However, Yasmin already beat him to a decision as she grabbed hold of his arm and continued to float upwards. They were too weak to fight and would only end up in that huge creature's way. It was best for them to escape with this window of opportunity they were given. Splash, splash. Soon enough, the two of them broke through the surface and began to swim towards the shore where Fuxi and the snake goddess awaited them. After Fuxi and the snake goddess helped them to the shore, their wounds were quickly tended to. Since they were still in the flaming maple forest, the snake goddess did not dare to use any theurgy to heal their wounds. The guy, Eastern Emperor Tai began. The guy in the water is besieged by the spirit sharks. Which race is he from? Where did you find such a powerful helper? Do you think he'll be okay? Which race? Fuxi repeated. He and the snake goddess exchanged a look, but it was King Yayan who answered. That's Zen from the Oneness Sky Palace. Eastern Emperor Tai's eyes widened in shock. Zen, he cried out in disbelief as he stood up in a hurry. The wound that was recently bandaged burst open from his rash action. He would have never expected that strange creature to be Zen. His worries also intensified since he realized that the young man was now at the mercy of those spirit sharks. The snake goddess pressed a hand on Eastern Emperor Tai's shoulder and pushed him to sit back down. Don't you worry now, he'll be fine. Eastern Emperor Tai shook his head. The spirit sharks, they'll. He wanted to tell them how formidable those two fish were, how scary their powers could be, and that they needed to get Zen out of there immediately. However, the calm look on their eyes stopped him. It was only then that he realized that the current Zen was now beyond his imagination. Yasmin smiled beside him. Has he grown in power after reaching the Eternal Realm? Splash. Just as she finished asking her question, a figure suddenly broke through the surface. Everyone turned around to find Zen holding two fish in his hands, the spirit sharks. These formerly terrifying predators struggled above the water but could not escape Zen's hold. Eastern Emperor Tai, Zen greeted, Madam Yasmin. As he reached the shore, Zen respectfully bowed to both of them. You really are Zen, Eastern Emperor Tai muttered in disbelief. It was quite a sight to see those two spirit sharks that had previously wounded him flail around in Zen's hands as the young man looked at him with a visibly relaxed and unbothered face. Chapter 3539, The Secret of the Long-Haired Monsters. It was easy for warriors with an extremely high cultivation base like Zen to change the shape of their bodies. However, Zen didn't just change his body form. Previously, no one was willing to go into the depths of the Divine River to hunt down Eastern Emperor Tai and Yasmin, because its waters were inhabited by two ferocious spirit sharks. Anyone who got into the water instantly died upon encountering the two spirit sharks. No one was exempted. Back then, the members of the Misty River race plotted to kill these two demon-like spirit sharks. However, 3 of their members were put to death while the 2 spirit sharks remained unharmed. In the end, the Misty River race had no other choice but to give up. Fortunately, the 2 spirit sharks could only stay in the Divine River. The members of the Misty River race were then forbidden to enter this area of the river, keeping them safe. Many members of other races and Eternal Realm warriors in the Grand Pure Realm had been attacked by the 2 spirit sharks. They were trapped to no escape and swallowed whole. The hearts of the members of various races and the Eternal Realm warriors pounded hard at the mention of the 2 fish. However, why were these two fish at Zen's mercy? Eastern Emperor Tai was astounded. He thought highly of Zen, yet he had never expected that he would become so powerful in only a short period. Crack, crack, Zen threw the two spirit sharks on the ground while commanding, "Don't move." How could the two spirit sharks possibly behave? Although they were intelligent and able to understand the words of humans, they were brutal and murderous. The two spirit sharks slammed against the ground as they landed, and then their small bodies quickly blasted out an astonishing force as they jumped into the divine river. Clap, clap, at fast speed, Zen waved his hands, pulling the two little fish back to the ground. The spirit sharks landed on the ground again, this time changing strategies as they drilled into the ground. The soft soil was an advantage for the spirit sharks. They moved smoothly for a while, but Zen's huge fist had already smashed the other side, stopping them. Bang! The ground caved in, and the two spirit sharks were stuck under the squeeze of the soil. "Don't try to escape or I'll smash you into pieces," Zen threatened them in a deep voice before pulling them out. Eastern Emperor Tai looked at the two spirit sharks and asked Zen, "Why don't you kill them? Why do you keep them with you? These two little fish seem to have a unique way of moving. If I confuse with them, they must be good other shore tokens," Zen responded. The eyes of the snake goddess, Fuxi, and King Yayan lit up, but Eastern Emperor Tai shook his head and said, "The power from their small bodies is enormous, and the speed at which they swim is very fast. However, such living creatures would rather die than be the other shore tokens." The two spirit sharks could understand the conversation. Their bean-like eyes widened, expressing their resistance. It was as if they would rather die than submit. "I have a way to make them yield," Zen uttered confidently. "But how can I store them for now? There shouldn't be any energy fluctuations in the flaming maple forest, so the space ring couldn't be used. Moreover, the two little fish were powerful other shore creatures." "Squeak, I can take care of that," King Yayan volunteered. It had been staying in the flaming maple forest all year round, so it knew how to handle the matter. While King Yayan was dealing with the spirit sharks, Eastern Emperor Tai finally asked, "Zen, how did you make it to stage 33 of the other shore so quickly? What about the situation of the Oneness Sky Palace?" Yasmin's face also reflected her concern. When the two of them were trapped in the Divine River, they were most worried about the Oneness Sky Palace and the Seven Mountains. "The Oneness Sky Palace?" Zen hesitated for a moment and replied, "Eastern Emperor Tai, Madam Yasmin, you two being trapped in stage 33 of the other shore was originally a conspiracy of Yellow Thirk and his fellows. The Sun Crow race had attacked and invaded our Oneness Sky Palace after you were trapped." Just as they had guessed. Eastern Emperor Tai and Yasmin looked at each other. Judging from all the actions of the Sun Crow race before they were trapped on the other shore, the two of them had predicted that this race would make an attack. However, the two of them remained safe and sound, which made them suspect that either the Sun Crow race did not attack, or the Oneness Sky Palace had already won the battle. Now that Zen had already mentioned this matter, the Oneness Sky Palace was most likely to have won. Zen reported to Eastern Emperor Tai about other details, including the invasion of the Sun Crow race and the death of Emperor Charm. Although Zen narrated those events briefly, the danger and setbacks in them still shocked Eastern Emperor Tai and Yasmin. Later on, after I entered the Eternal Scroll painting, Yellow Thirk and Divine Farmer led their people to attack the Oneness Sky Palace. Elder Pierce and Elder Auden had no choice but to give up on the Bloom Divine Province and transfer the elites from the Seven Mountains to the Pear Hill, but they were stopped halfway. During the first half of the Battle of the Pear Hill, Zen was also trapped on the other shore, like Eastern Emperor Tai and Yasmin. He didn't know much about the details of the battle. Fuxi then proceeded to tell Eastern Emperor Tai and Yasmin what had happened. When they heard about the Black Ship meddling in the battle and the Grand Master of Heaven being defeated, Eastern Emperor Tai and Yasmin froze. Taken by great surprise, they were almost unable to move. Eastern Emperor Tai was previously shocked that Zen had easily taken down two spirit sharks, but now he was unable to say a word, even more impressed that Zen had defeated the Grand Master of Heaven. Recovering from her shock, Yasmin suddenly realized a problem. "Zen, where is Dora?" She had heard Zen mention Elvenia several times, but he didn't talk about Dorothy at all. Since all the elites of the Oneness Sky Palace had moved to the Pear Hill, Dorothy was likely to be among them. Right. However, the hesitation on Zen's face caused Yasmin to worry. She asked again, "What happened to Dorothy, Zen? Tell me right now. Since you got trapped on the other shore, Dorothy has disappeared from the Origin Mountain. Uncle Winchell and Aunt Felicity have searched the whole Origin Mountain, but they didn't find her." Zen replied. "So Dora isn't in the Pear Hill? Is that what you're saying?" Yasmin asked in a serious tone. I'm afraid so. Zen nodded before a long pause. Maybe she is figuring out a way to rescue you. Yasmin stared at Zen angrily. She had asked Zen to take care of Dorothy before, so he had to find answers about Dorothy's disappearance. However, when she saw the remorse on Zen's face, she looked away and took a deep breath. What way can Dora come up with? There is a door in Dorothy's mind, right? Zen suddenly asked. Yasmin had already associated the mystery of Dorothy's disappearance with that door. When she heard Zen mention it, she shifted her eyes back to him. You know that door. I've seen it before. I've seen it once when I entered stage 1 of the other shore along with Dorothy, said Zen. I've seen it for the second time after entering the heavenly thunder plane. At that time, Fuxi and the snake goddess also saw the door suddenly appear. What's inside it? Yasmin asked. Zen answered, when the door opened, 2 long-haired monsters emerged. These monsters were unafraid of the lightning of the heavenly thunder plane. They wanted to drag human sovereign into the door, but they failed. When Yasmin heard about the long-haired monsters, her face had an indifferent expression. When Dorothy was still a child, Yasmin had entered her mind several times to come into contact with the door. She had seen one monster with long hair, and she had even communicated with it once. Chapter 3540, An Offer. The long-haired monster was cautious. All it asked was for Yasmin to be kind to Dorothy and raise her properly. Also, it had only revealed that their race was cursed. Though they possessed powerful strength, they still needed Dorothy's help. As Dorothy grew up, Yasmin grew more and more disgusted with the door. She did not want Dorothy to be in danger, so she tried her best to keep the door a mystery and warned her to never open it. As long as Dorothy doesn't open that door, they won't be able to come out. Dorothy must have already entered it, Yasmin said in all confidence. But why did the door appear in the heavenly thunder plane? Asked Eastern Emperor Tai. The snake goddess's eyes shot up. If Dorothy could really enter the door and order the monsters, what would she do? As they heard what the snake goddess said, Zen, Eastern Emperor Tai, King Yayan, and Fuxi all turned to Yasmin. Since Yasmin was the most important person to Dorothy, it would make sense that Dorothy would use any means to save her. This way, it would be easy to explain the door's appearance in the heavenly thunder plane. After all, the heavenly thunder plane was right next to the flaming maple forest, and the goal of the monsters would have been to save Yasmin. Although these were only speculations, Yasmin believed it 100%. She shook her head as she believed Dorothy was a reckless girl. Within the flaming maple forest, 2 creatures quietly observed Zen and his companions. Though they were afraid of Zen's capabilities, they couldn't run away just yet. Otherwise, the element spirit civilization wouldn't let them off so easily. Moreover, they still had the power to defend themselves if Zen ever attacked. After Zen eventually left the open space in the forest, the 3 members of the Misty River race hurriedly left as well. They were led by Larkin. Meanwhile, the other creatures and the Eternal Realm warriors discussed and chattered among themselves. That guy's got balls. He doesn't show any respect to Larkin at all. I have a bad feeling about this. Let's just watch the show. What's wrong? If anything, Holly will probably appear and kill that guy. Though Zen displayed unimaginable power, no one there thought highly of him because Holly was invincible to them. The Misty River race was located south of the Divine River. All in all, it was the most beautiful area in the flaming maple forest. After he rushed back, Larkin headed straight to the village right at the center of their territory. As the gate of the village opened, he was greeted by a creature covered in black that lay in a large water tank. This was Wheeler, the current leader of the Misty River race and also Larkin's father. All sorts of bones were soaked in the large water tank. These bones were retrieved from the Divine River, and their quality was much better than that of the gold and silver bone. Melting bones in water and burning bones with fire were the 2 known body refining methods of the Misty River race. However, no fire could be found in the flaming maple forest. Fire was a released energy, which would attract the attacks of the flaming maple forest. The previous leader of the Misty River race wanted to make a breakthrough. In his attempt, he traveled beyond the flaming maple forest to try and burn the bones with fire. However, the moment he stepped out of the forest, he was killed. "Father, here came an arrogant guy," said Larkin with a gloomy face. As Wheeler leaned against the tank, he tilted his head and looked intently at his son. "If he was only arrogant, you would have already killed him by now." If Eternal Realm warriors wanted to flourish in the flaming maple forest, they had to be well aware of their strength. They must make sure not to go against the Misty River race, or they would be doomed. Zen was so nonchalant about the Misty River race that it could be assumed he had tremendous strength to back him up. He was not only arrogant, but also strong, which was why Larkin made no move. You already knew it? Larkin asked in annoyance. There's no need for us to stand up for the element spirit civilization. We benefited from them in exchange for their freedom in the lower reaches. The other things have nothing to do with us, said Wheeler. Larkin frowned as he heard this. But that human brat is so arrogant. How can we swallow all this humiliation? If I say I don't have the confidence to win against him, would you endure it? Wheeler shot back. Hearing his father's words, Larkin grew speechless. He did not expect his father to ever admit weakness, especially to Zen. You're telling me you can't defeat him? How is this possible? Larkin shook his head in disbelief. Wheeler's tone deepened. You know, Naris's power was extraordinary. Even if I wanted to kill him, I couldn't do it so quickly. That brat, there is no need for us to provoke such a powerful opponent. Hearing this from his father astonished Larkin. It seemed that he couldn't retaliate against what Zen had done to him today. Just as he was about to leave, the door of the village was pushed open another time. Behind the door stood a creature from another race. His body was covered with bark-like scars. Larkin knew exactly who this was. Abner, one of Naris's followers. He was the second leader of their group. As he entered the village, Abner bowed before Wheeler and Larkin. Before he could say anything, Wheeler cut him off. If the Ice Spirit wants me to deal with that bloke from the human race, you can show yourself out right now. Unexpectedly, Abner shook his head in disagreement. The Ice Spirit doesn't want you to make a move. Larkin stared coldly at Abner. Then what are you doing here? The Ice Spirit wants Holly to make a move, Abner continued to explain. As soon as Wheeler heard this, a light flashed his eyes. Within a second, Larkin grabbed Abner by the collar and said coldly, You mongrel. Do you know what you are talking about? The most powerful member of the Misty River race was not Wheeler. It was Holly. Though Holly never led the Misty River race, he was still regarded as a legend. It was because of his existence that the Misty River race in the Flaming Maple Forest was well respected. It was said that Holly accidentally discovered a burnt arm in the Divine River. At that time, he was not so strong, so he tried his luck with the river. Not knowing where the arm came from, Holly swallowed it. After that, Holly's strength increased dramatically. This was also the reason the Misty River race ruled over the Flaming Maple Forest. The Ice Spirit wanting Holly to make a move is stupid and arrogant, Wheeler said. He waved his hand to calm Larkin down. What do we get in return? Abner smiled. The Ice Spirit will permit the Flaming Maple Forest to expand southwest by 100,000 miles. Bang! Just then, the big water tank that Wheeler was soaked in burst with a loud bang and water gushed out from the cracks. Larkin shot a look at Abner in surprise. Really? Wheeler asked. The Ice Spirit always keeps his promises. Abner nodded. The Misty River race had only a handful of members and their strength was considered mediocre in the Grand Pure Realm. Everything they had achieved today relied on the Flaming Maple Forest. The expansion of the Flaming Maple Forest meant the expansion of their scope of influence. To expand 100,000 miles to the southwest would be a huge advantage. Then they would be able to reach the boundary of the second realm of Three Purities stage, otherwise known as the Supreme Pure Realm. This was an offer the Misty River race could not refuse.